Am I the asshole for telling my cousin that she only got pregnant to trap a man, and it didn't go over well? Hey everyone, here's my tale from 7 years ago. It occurred around the time I first relocated to Vegas. I had a cousin with 7 children, and since I had just moved, I hadn't seen them since the youngest was in diapers. Now, this relative has a sister who has only 1 child. She receives food stamps and child support for just 1 child, despite the fact that she is unemployed. She's the type of person who swaps her food stamps for cash and spends it on frivolous purchases like trips to California and green herb to smoke. She only cares about people she can use. In contrast, my cousin with 7 children works her buttocks off. She's a little embarrassed that she receives government assistance because she feels responsible for raising all 7 of her children, but no matter how hard she works, she just earns enough to cover the bills. Her food stamps only cover the cost of 1 month's worth of groceries. If you haven't noticed, growing children consume a lot of food. Mind you, I was 20 years old about to turn 21, and I always had some money left over after each payday. My payments were always paid on time, and I occasionally helped my mother. We went to see the kids one day, and the 3rd youngest told me that Christmas was approaching and that he was delighted because they get to eat excellent food on Christmas. These kids live on ramen and ravioli. Hearing him say this broke my heart. Her children are generally well behaved, and they deserve a lovely Christmas. I began asking them what they wanted, from oldest to youngest. Dax wanted headphones and a new sweatshirt. Jen requested a sweater and nail polish. Darren requested a football and a cake. Junior wanted a soccer ball and cake. Zed wanted Transformers and Power Rangers. Nana wanted a My Little Pony, and Jay wanted Paw Patrol. Clearly, I have changed their names here. So, because the kids don't understand Spanish yet, I informed my cousin that I'd be taking Christmas off and that I wanted to take care of it for the kids. She seemed to want to cry. She thanked me and said she would try to repay me. I told her no, but she claimed she'd take an extra shift since she still wanted to get them something. I got paid and established a $40 limit for each child. I gave each kid 2 large presents from Walmart and used the rest of the money to get them all modest extras from the dollar store. Her children appreciate all you give them. The 2 who wanted cake got it. I even tied a bow around it and concealed it among the milk and eggs in the refrigerator. Now, I assume my cousin informed her sister since I received a call from her sister. Here's how the conversation went. She called and said, "Hey, Chris told me you're doing Christmas for her kids." I replied, "Yes, they are spending Christmas Eve at my house. Mom is cooking dinner, and we'll open presents the next morning." "Surely you have room for one more?" she asked. "Are you talking about your kid?" "Of course I am." "Okay, no issue. Drop him off on Christmas Eve night to eat and watch movies, and then pick him up the following morning." "No problem." Mind you, after buying the kids gifts and my parents, I was a little broke. The entitled cousin called me the day before Christmas Eve, so I scrimped and bought her child some dollar store toys. On Christmas Eve my mother gathered up the 7 children and brought them to the house. They were astounded at the gifts under the tree and the stockings with their names on it. The elder ones were joking about, wondering who got what. I waited for perhaps an hour or 2, but my cousin never arrived with her child. So we fed the children and began watching movies. After around 3 movies, all of the youngsters dropped out from food comas. We awoke the next morning to find that my entitled cousin had not yet responded. The children began opening their presents. Junior and Darren enjoyed some Christmas cake, which they shared with their siblings. Everything was in full flow when there was a knock on the door. I opened it, and I wasn't particularly pleased. "Why the freak are you knocking on my door?" "Oh, it's you two. Why didn't you bring your child last night?" I asked. My cousin snapped, "Watch your mouth. I became busy and couldn't make it." At this moment I rolled my eyes because I could smell a bull. "You've said worse things in front of your kid. You want to come inside?" "Sorry, we do not have time." "Can we just get his presents and meal and leave?" "His meal?" "Yeah, your mom cooked." "Yes, she cooked last night. You were busy and the kids ate everything." "You didn't save my kid a plate." "Well, you never brought him, so no." "Whatever, just give us his present." Her child seemed to want to stay and play. I felt sorry for him. I walked inside and swam through the wrapping paper to find his gifts. They were little, so I placed them in a gift bag. He opened them on my porch, and his eyes brightened. "Woo, a ninja, a wrestler, ooh, silly putty. I received a puzzle, I love it. Thank you Momo. This is what my nephews call me." I felt a little emotional and hugged him back, saying, "Merry Christmas." Meanwhile, my cousin stood there and asked, "That's it?" I gave her a glance, trying to remain calm, but my anger was mounting. "What do you mean?" I inquired. "How much did you spend on them?" she insisted. That's really none of your business, I said. She scoffed. You are selfish. You got him these cheap toys in order to buy all of that junk for Chris and her children. Allow my child to have one of their toys so that it is fair. And that was all. I couldn't keep it in anymore. Are you insane? I snapped, shutting the door and concealing her children's ears. It is Christmas. Be grateful I purchased anything at all. You only call us when you need something. You deprive your son of a wonderful time since all you care about is yourself. This is not fair to him. You waste your money on frivolous things when you have a full child to care for. You only have one child, and because you milk your baby daddy, that poor guy pays a lot of money for his son, while you spend it on your nails and marijuana. How about you act your age and take responsibility for once? She appeared shocked. Who do you think you are? She exclaimed. I'm not a lady who intentionally became pregnant in order to trap a man. A mother who does not get aid but pays taxes so that lazy people like you can feed their children. The woman who bought your child Christmas presents because I was not selfish like his mother. She appeared to want to hit me, and she probably would have if my mother hadn't come outside. My cousin felt intimidated by my mother, so she grabbed her child and went. Later, she moved to Chicago to leech off her mother. I hope her child is okay and doesn't take up on her bad habits. Late update. I spoke with my cousin who has 7 children, and she contacted their mother in Chicago. The child has grown taller, wow, genetics, and his grandmother has legal custody of him. His mother got in trouble with the authorities, as one would expect, but it wasn't because of drugs. She is serving time and has lost custody. His father still lives in Las Vegas, but he cannot afford to care for him because he is struggling to care for himself. My cousin is saving his allowance for a trip to see us, so I handed him $250 to help. Was I a jerk for calling out my cousin like that? Nope. At the very least, I ensured that the child did not hear me or took steps to minimize it. I honestly don't understand how people like her rationalize their actions. Whether she took the child out of laziness or with the intention of receiving free presents, she is still a bad parent, and it appears that social services agreed with me. However, inconveniencing a large number of other people in order to receive free food and toys that you had no intention of giving to your child is both lazy and selfish. At the very least, her child appears to be capable of outperforming his mother. Hopefully, without her influence, he will mature into a well-adjusted and moral individual who learns from her mistakes. If his father cannot afford to see him, it appears that he has a difficult situation. This reminded me of how grateful I was as a child for the cheapest bargain bin toys. Until my early teens, I was content with a modest toy from the dollar shop. It demonstrates how difficult things must be for my other cousins' children when they request sweaters, indicating a need for warm clothing rather than taking it for granted. 7 years after my husband caught me cheating with my boss and went to prison for assault, he's out. Now, I'm alone, and my kids hate me. I'm a selfish person, or so I tell myself practically every night when I hear the silence in my home. My children aren't here, my ex-husband hates me for good cause, my immediate family is fractured, and I've never stopped hating myself for what I did. My selfish conduct occurred in 2015. I had just reached 39, and I admit that I took my ex-husband for granted. My ex told me every day that I was beautiful, that he wanted to be intimate with me, that he cared for me, and that he treated me as an equal. He never regarded me as a queen or princess. I was his partner. We'd been married for 20 years by that point, high school sweethearts and each other's only, and it seemed right. My family adored him, my brother looked up to him, and my ex supported him through many difficult moments. My ex was the person people contacted when they were in difficulties, and he assisted them. He was a good guy. Over the years, I have given him 2 strong boys. At the time of this narrative, they were 18 and 16, and we had twin girls who were 13 years old. I had gained weight and felt self-conscious, but he still called me lovely. Our fights were rare and far between. We discussed everything, but when we disagreed, it was typically over sex or a lack thereof on my part, as well as the things I refused to do in bed. It wasn't that I didn't want to do things, it was just that I wasn't in the mood, which he understood. When I turned 39, my birthday celebration unveiled the new me. I had spent the entire year in the gym, doing yoga and Pilates. My efforts helped me lose 180 pounds and reach 135, which was an incredible transformation for me. I had always been a plump girl, so having a tight fit figure was a new sensation for me. My ex-husband also went to the gym with me, albeit not as frequently, but he dropped from 260 pounds to 225 and began to shape his physique. My ex-husband could not keep his hands off of me, but I was still not in the mood. He certainly made an effort. We attended dinners, danced and went for regular walks. He always helped around the house, and I could see in his eyes how much he adored and lusted after me. After 20 years together, he still gazed at me with passion. I believe any woman would desire that, but I wasn't in the mood. At the time, I assumed I was going through early menopause because we only had sex 2, maybe 3 times a month and I was a one and done, but he desired more. No matter how hard he tried, I just wasn't into it. He suggested couple counseling, but I refused. So my selfishness comes into play. A new manager began working in my office a few days after my birthday. He was significantly younger and more attractive, and for some reason, he was interested in me. Initially, I ignored him. Then it switched from ignoring to casual chatting. He flirted, so I showed him my ring. However, after 2 months of relentless flirtation, I reciprocated, which led to me telling him about my life and finding myself thinking about him more and more. This was an emotional affair, as I now realize, but I was high at the time. My ex-husband suspected something was wrong with me. We had a furious dispute over it, which I feel I began. He moved to kiss me and I subconsciously produced a horrified expression. It wasn't directed at my ex. I was thinking about another man as my husband leaned in, and I was dissatisfied with the whole situation. At least that is what I tell myself. A week later, I asked the new boss to meet me in a cafe so we could discuss. I was about to beg him to leave me alone and that I couldn't do this, but he kissed me first, and my thoughts went blank. That marked the beginning of our 6-month affair. During that period, I did things with this man that my ex-husband had long desired. I was more enthusiastic, willing, and usually in the mood. I think it was because it was something new. During this time, my ex and I continued to have sex, albeit less regularly. I started pushing him away, nitpicking his minor habits and even criticizing him. I'm ashamed of how I handled him at the time. I only understood what I was doing when my brother came to visit and informed me that my ex had confided in him. My ex was despondent and contemplating divorce, claiming that he no longer loved me and that he was beginning to lose interest in me. That brought me out of it. So I immediately called it off, quit my job, and promised myself that I would make my husband feel loved and cherished. I was going to change this. If possible, I would be a better wife. My AP, affair partner, arrived at my residence with a package of office supplies from my desk, which I had ordered to be shipped. We spoke. He wanted to know what he had done wrong, and I told him I needed to work on my marriage. I told him to leave, but he wanted one final chance. I told him no, but he begged and pleaded, and like a fool, I gave in. We went into the guest room and started fighting. I'm not sure how long we were doing this, but when he was on top of me, I felt him violently snap back, and there was a huge crash. I sat up, and my ex looked at me. My AP was on the floor, and there was a big hole in the wall. I tried to talk to my ex, but his eyes were bloodshot. His lips trembled as tears streamed down his cheeks. I could tell he was in a lot of agony, and I felt disgusted. I witnessed my AP stand up and try to leave. My ex looked at him, and my AP told him that if he knew what was best for him, he'd back off. So my ex assaulted him. I yelled and cried for my ex to stop. Desperate, I jumped on his back, causing me to be slammed to the ground. Everything became blurry for a time. Sentences sounded muffled, but when I awoke, my ex had my AP by his side and was on the phone. All I could do was stare at my AP's injured face and the blood and teeth on the floor next to him. There was a loud bang on the door, and I saw my ex put the phone on speaker, carefully set it on the floor, drop to his knees, and place his hands on the back of his head. The door opened and the police entered and handcuffed him. Paramedics came shortly later. I quickly found that he had phoned 911 himself. At the hospital, everything went terribly wrong. My father didn't say anything to me, he just stared at me with shame. My brother was yelling at me, looking upset and questioning how I could have done that to my ex. My mother was comforting me, telling me everything will be fine, which prompted my father to yell at her. His family was infuriated. His sisters threatened me, and his parents seemed to wish to put me to an early grave. I approached my children, but they refused to speak with me. My sons wouldn't even look at me. My AP was severely damaged and required reconstructive surgery on his face. My ex had nearly crushed it. At the hospital, a woman entered my room and immediately attacked me. My brother grabbed her away from me and it turned out she was my AP's wife. I didn't realize he was married. He never wore a ring and never said anything. It made me feel even worse. Prior to the trial, my boys stayed with their grandparents on my husband's side, while my girls refused to speak with me. My ex did not want to see me either. I attempted to visit him at the county jail, but was forbidden. My brother made sure my ex went to the correctional facility where he worked so he could monitor him. When I requested my brother to deliver a message for me, he told me to go to hell. During the trial, I saw my ex for the first time in months. He gazed at me with rage, and it hurt more than I could have imagined. He had always looked at me with love, even while we were fighting. He always looked at me with love, but throughout the trial, it was hatred. I had to excuse myself for crying in the restroom. As the days passed, I was compelled to recount my affair in full for everyone to hear. When I informed them how long it had lasted, my ex looked devastated, and my father stood up and exited the courtroom. During my ex's testimony, I discovered that he had returned home to surprise me with lunch and a weekend trip for 2 to the Catskills. He had planned a romantic retreat, but as we walked in, he responded. He claimed that when the AP told him to step aside, he snapped and pummeled him, stopping only after he flung me off his back. He instantly called 911, and we heard the recording in court. Hearing the misery in his voice and sobbing as he did everything the operator told him to do was heartbreaking. The AP couldn't speak verbally and was extremely drugged, so they utilized photographs of him, which made me sick because I was to blame for everything. My ex broke his eye socket, cheekbones and jaw. They claimed there were bone fragments that were too small to piece together. My ex was charged with a third-degree felony and sentenced to 7 years in prison, causing my kids to yell and protest, as well as my girls and his family to let out a howl that still haunts me today. The first 3 months were terrible. My AP's soon-to-be ex-wife sued me for affection-based alienation. My ex has filed for divorce. My eldest son has moved out. My other kid remained in his room, and my twins were rebelling fiercely. My ex-sisters-in-law attacked me in the middle of Price Chopper. When I tried to apologize to his mother, she spat in my face. My father and brother refused to speak with me. Eventually, I needed to locate a new job. There was no money coming in, and I nearly depleted my funds, but I was essentially blacklisted in my sector. It was negative publicity for the accounting firm, so I started working in retail and became a seasonal H&R block adjuster during the tax season. I almost lost my house. My ex refused to let me visit him, and each letter I sent was returned. Crying in the shower became practically a daily habit. My parents almost split up because my mother was continually defending me. My brother refused to accept me, and my pals, whom I'd known since elementary school, were divided. I soon began to have ideas of terminating things, of packing my goods and going. The guilt was so heavy. I eventually saw a therapist, who admonished me for being too familiar with my ex. I no longer considered him a spouse, instead, I saw him as a friend with perks, and I treated him accordingly. I did, and she was right. I became too comfortable with him. I regarded him as a comrade, but he saw me as his wife, the mother of his children, the woman he adored and wanted. I took him for granted. Almost a year passed, and my children remained silent. When I served dinner, they would take their meal and disappear to their rooms, not even looking at me. I had a few meltdowns, imploring them to say anything to me, but nothing happened. My brother was married and I was not invited, but my children were. I continued to try to visit my ex, hoping that he had put me on the visitor list, but I was always turned down. My letters were still getting returned. It left me terribly depressed, and I felt I deserved it. Then, unexpectedly, my brother showed up. I was both surprised and pleased to see him, as it was the first time he had visited my house since the trial. He just came to reprimand me, informing me that my ex was in the hospital after being stabbed. An inmate attempted to sexually abuse him in his cell, which resulted in my ex being stabbed in the stomach and the inmate's spine breaking. My brother yelled at me, "You did this?" before returning to his truck. I grieved for days thereafter because he was correct. I did this. I attempted to visit my ex in the infirmary, but was forbidden. For 4 more years, I attempted to communicate with him and continued to write letters, but they were returned. Fortunately, our children visited their father frequently, which is how I heard he had been placed in protective custody by my brother after the attack. My eldest son graduated from the same college as my ex and majored in the same field. He only called his siblings. He never wanted to talk to me. He never comes to our place for the holidays, only to his grandparents. My other son followed suit, attending the same institution and refusing to call me. My twins were difficult to deal with, but they went to see their father once a week, which helped them feel better. When they became too disobedient, their uncle would punish them, but my brother and I continued to communicate sparingly. I tried to visit his wife after they had their first child, but I was ordered to leave. My mother kept me updated on their life, but my father still refused to acknowledge me. Then, at the start of May this year, my children were joyful, and my sons returned home. I had no idea why and it didn't matter. They were home. For 4 months my children were present and I tried everything I could to express my regret, but I was mostly ignored. Still, they were talking to me, and it made me very glad to have a conversation with them and learn about their life. My eldest had been dating a woman for over a year, my second-born was on a college track team, and my girls started talking to me again. I hated myself even more for what I had done to them. It was wonderful to see them smiling, joking and eating supper together again. At the end of August, I was preparing for the twins' first day of senior year, which also coincided with their 18th birthday. I conveyed my enthusiasm for their birthday party and told them what I planned to accomplish. My girls immediately asked if we could reschedule. This confused me because I believed we were improving. When I inquired why, one of them explained, "Because Dad is throwing us a party, and I don't want you near him." That comment stunned me. I asked when their father was released and they claimed he was let out at the end of April for good behavior. I cried because he was gone, and it shattered me even more. They were more present because he was gone. They felt better and more cheery now that their father was back in their lives. It wasn't because we were beginning to recover, they had him back. When I questioned where he was staying, they told me he was with my brother. I tried calling. I needed to speak with him, but he refused. I attempted going over, holding all the letters that had been returned throughout the years, and I caught a glimpse of him through the crack in the door. I called his name, but my brother told me to leave. I handed him the letters and departed. When I reached the driveway, I heard his voice. When I turned around, he was walking toward me. I immediately started crying and rushed to hug him, but he returned my letters. "You forgot this," he coldly told me. I cried as he walked away. I begged and pleaded for him to talk to me, but he simply walked back into the home. My children stood outside the entrance, staring at me, with no love in their eyes. At that point, I knew my children were simply tolerating me. However, I still want to improve it. I'd like to tell them how selfish I was. I want to tell him how much I miss him and how sorry I am for destroying what we had. So I'm still trying to go through my daily existence. My mother informed me that my AP's ex-wife began seeing my ex 2 years ago and has been returning to see him. I don't really care, all I want is for him to forgive me. I want him to speak to me. I want him to be with me. I want him to look at me like he used to. I want my kids to be with us. I really want my family back, but I know I do not deserve it. Even if we miraculously reunite, it will never be the same. I was selfish and I wish I could take it back. My son's response. This is a response to my mother's post entitled "My Selfishness Ruined My Family." I'm a frequent Reddit user, therefore I'm using a throwaway since I don't want anyone in my social circle to know this is me. I try to keep my past a secret. My college buddies are unaware that my father is in prison, and I don't want to inform them. So, as I strolled around campus, I overheard others talking about and sharing this post, which brought back a lot of emotions I'd been working to overcome. I looked it up and found enough evidence to conclude it was about my family, which enraged me. I reached out to my mother and, as usual, tears flowed. I yelled at her. When I went to visit my father and told him what I did, he yelled at me as well, but he is a wonderful man. He just yelled at me for cussing. He always tells me that even if I don't love my mother, I should respect her. But it is difficult to appreciate someone like her. My father has always battled. He would instill in us the importance of being grateful for growing up in a community where we would not be attacked for obtaining excellent marks or reading books. He informed us that where he grew up, children were bullied for seeking white things, such as attending college. He described how difficult it was for him in the South Bronx. My aunts informed us that when he was 13, he joined a gang so that he could be left alone at school. When he was 15, his father died of cancer, and my father had to be a surrogate parent to his 2 sisters due to a lack of life insurance. He worked and did anything he could to help pay the rent and put food on the table, all while still attending school. My father felt it was lucky that his mother remarried a wonderful man and relocated to upstate New York for a better lifestyle. My uncle informed me that when they first met my father, they thought he was peculiar. It was the 1990s, and when my father strolled into school wearing baggy trousers and a Puerto Rican flag shirt, they decided to tease him. My uncle said they weren't expecting my father to fight back, but he did. He kicked their asses. Instead of walking away, my father helped him up and offered if he wanted to skip school, share a 40 and talk things over. My uncle remarked that when my father did that, he knew they'd be buddies, and they soon started hanging out. That's when my father introduced him to my mother, and they hit it off. They attended the same college and got married by the end of their first year. Growing up, my parents were always in a romantic relationship. They were always holding hands and kissing, which was quite humiliating. Even at the beginning of my senior year, when everything went wrong, my father treated my mother as if she were a teenager. He loved and appreciated her. I can honestly tell that he never put her on a pedestal. He would lecture me that a woman will not respect a man who puts her on a pedestal. When I questioned why, he responded, "Because she'll always be looking down on you." My father informed me that both his father and stepfather shared the same philosophy. Treat your wife as an equal. She is your greatest friend and confidant, just as you are hers. My father had his idiosyncrasies. He was a large guy who was always joking, 5'11", 260 pounds, and despite his weight, he was highly active. I used to enjoy it when he sang to my mother. We all did. He'd serenade her, buy her flowers, and sign the card, "Because it's Thursday and I was thinking about you." He occasionally wrote her love letters and defended her honor when she was treated rudely or disrespectfully. He frequently complimented her on her beauty. My father demonstrated to the daughters the type of man they should have in their lives. My father was always there for my uncle, even when everyone else believed he was a lost cause. My father never gave up on him, and as my grandfather once stated, he knocked the stupid out of him and left behind the man he was supposed to be. That sentence has always made me laugh. My father showed me how a guy, a friend, and a husband should act. Prior to her affair, my mother had always adored my father. He was constantly supportive and encouraging. He was her one-man pep rally when she was feeling low, and she was his. They had the marriage that we all wanted. Then my mother messed it up. I recall those months when she spoke to my father as if he were beneath her. He pushed back but controlled himself. Even though my father was a college graduate and a successful financial consultant, he could go from zero to ghetto in 5 seconds. Grandma described him as being similar to his father. Nice, respectable, and helpful, but willing to cut your neck out with his bare hands. My father tried everything. Buying her flowers, taking her out to dinner and dancing, but she was in her own little world and mistreated him. We all witnessed it. It had a significant impact on my brother and twin sisters, but my father smiled and assured us that everything will work out. He would add that Mom was probably stressed out at work and bringing it home. I believed it, especially after she quit her job. I honestly believed it was her employment that was the issue. Then my father was arrested. Mom, do you know how embarrassed we felt when the entire school was discussing what happened? My father got detained because my mother couldn't close her legs. I couldn't bear looking at you, so I went to stay at Grandma's place. The sight of you repulsed me. When I visited Dad, he couldn't bear to look at me. He was embarrassed. He told me he had failed as a husband and a guy. I told him he didn't, but he said he did since a man would have considered the repercussions of his actions before doing anything so idiotic. He said he failed as a husband because his wife had cheated on him with another man. I implored him to please look at me, but he refused. Then you had the nerve to seek our forgiveness, and for the first time in my life, I wanted to physically harm you. We were all hurting, and you asked for forgiveness. Sitting in that trial and listening to that 911 call was the worst 25 minutes of my life. 25 minutes of listening to my father, who would have murdered and died for you, crying and imploring the operator for assistance, telling the woman that he thought he had killed someone, and again stating, "The love of my life cheated on me." It harmed us more than anything. I understand you attempted to act as a character witness for Dad. We all told you not to do it, but you did anyway. Why? Did you want to show us that you still loved him? Tell the court that he is a good man. Because, in my opinion, the cross-examination in which you informed everyone how long you had been with that son of a bitch was the reason we lost him and sent him to jail. I believe if we had an actual lawyer rather than an appointed one, he would have walked. As a result, I experienced anger issues. My brother became a secret alcoholic. One of the twins was suicidal, and you were unaware. All you wanted was to attempt to work things out with Dad, leaving me to support my siblings. I loathed you. In certain ways, I still do. When I got to college, I had no desire to associate with you. Like my father, I had to be a surrogate parent to my siblings. I was working full-time, attending college, and giving you money to help pay the bills. I'm not sure why you made it appear like you were doing it alone. Mom, I know it was difficult, I know you were depressed, but you got aid with your finances and Grandma defended you. But Mom only did it because everyone was against you, or so the twins believe. When Dad was stabbed, I nearly had a mental breakdown. I'd just seen him that day. I was making fun of how muscular he had become, and we had a nice chuckle about what Dad dubbed the prison body plan. He made it sound like a funny commercial. I was almost back to school when I received the phone call. I almost crashed the car because my brain shut down. It was difficult for everybody. I didn't tell anyone, but I sat outside the scumbag's flat. I wanted to beat him up so severely, but when I saw him walking with that cane, I remembered Dad's words and drove away. As the years passed, Grandma died, followed by Grandpa a few days later from broken heart syndrome, and Dad was unable to attend the burial. Did you know that both of his sisters married in the waiting room so he could give them away? The harm you've caused to all of us is immense. It didn't help that you continued asking us for forgiveness and another chance. You never gave us room to understand or heal. You just kept asking, and all I saw was your desire to make yourself feel better. You did not give a damn. You did not try. You merely gave us room and pretended that we were expected to act normally again. Yes, you tried later, but not when it was most crucial. When Dad came out, he told us to start talking to you. He stated you were a good mother to us and that we should treat you with respect, so we did. It made you happy for a while. I remembered what it was like to not despise you. Dad struggled to find work at first, but one of his old clients eventually hired him. I did not anticipate the twins to spring that bomb on you. Dad didn't want you to know he was gone, so when you appeared, it disturbed him. He threw up after speaking with you. He stated the sight of you made him nauseous. Regarding your statement in your post regarding your ex-wife coming to see Dad, she has been seeing him weekly for over 3 years, and they have spent time together since he was released. So please, don't build a castle in the sky about the two of you getting back together. Call me if you want to discuss this. Call me if you want to fix things with your children. What you did last week, posting what is perhaps the worst time of our lives, is sheer selfishness, as your title implies. I told Dad about it, but he didn't care. He claimed you are only the mother of his children. Entitled Syl demanded I gift her a baby for her 30th birthday. So I exposed her ridiculousness and immaturity to everyone on social media. I'm not sure if anyone can relate to my dilemma or has even heard of it. It feels strange to even write this. It's about my Mill and Syl, who are pampered brats. Syl is 29 and a single woman. Well, that's not the issue. The issue is that she is an entitled woman who will not accept no as an answer. I am 37 years old and have been married to my 40-year-old husband for 12 years. We have 2 children, a 9-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. Despite our blissful marriage, touch wood, my pain in the neck is my overly theatrical Mill and my overly spoiled Syl. Before I tell you more about my position, let me paint a picture of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. They are social butterflies, similar to upper-class rich ladies in soap operas who spend their days at salons and massage parlors, and their evenings at bars chatting about other useless women. They exist in their own fantasy universe. They do not work. All they do is shop and chat. My FIL is busy generating money, while these women are busy spending it. FIL is essentially a non-existent part of the family, or rather a cash cow. There's a rumor that FIL has a mistress, and MIL is aware of it, so they have an unspoken agreement. He fulfills all of their demands without question, in exchange for having a mistress. I am not sure how true it is, but given Phil's status in the family, it appears likely. Otherwise, no sensible man would be silent about Mill and Syl's foolishness. Now, back to my sad existence. Last week, Mill called and invited me out to lunch, on a Wednesday afternoon. I wanted to say no, but she hadn't requested to meet with me in a long time. So I suggested an alternate schedule. I suggested that we meet for dinner in the evening, but they are busy women at night, spending time with friends at the gaming parlor. So we decided to meet on Saturday afternoon. I arrived in my usual attire, whereas she wore a completely shimmering black dress. What a great pick for an afternoon lunch. She critiqued my fashion sense the moment she saw me. After the light talk, she inquired about what we intended to give my Syl for her 30th birthday. I was perplexed because her 29th birthday was just a few months ago. I mentioned her next birthday is around 10 months away. She laughed and continued. That's why we need to plan ahead of time. Remember what happened last time? She was dissatisfied with the gifts you gave her, and her birthday was spoiled. I swallowed hard and said, yeah, of course, we spoiled her birthday because we gave her a normal $250 dress and not a premium Zara one with a matching sapphire necklace. She went on to elaborate. To avoid upsetting her this time, I have thought of the perfect gift which you guys should give her. So what was that? A baby. That's right, she wanted me to make a baby and give it to her entitled brat of a daughter. I was appalled. How could anyone believe that someone would ask for a baby as a gift? I could not understand what she was saying. I had to ask her several times if I had heard it correctly. She responded, yes, I want you to have a baby and give it to Stacy, SIL, as her 30th birthday present. I flipped out and said, why do you think I would do that? She cried. To compensate for your inadequate present this time. You wrecked her 29th birthday, and now you owe her this. I stood up and stated, I don't owe anyone anything. I'm not a broodmare who would breed a child and give it to her. I stormed out of the restaurant. On the way home, I stopped to pick up my son from his friend's house. When I got home, my husband questioned what had happened between me and Mil. I asked him what he'd been told. My husband is aware of Mil and Sil's tantrums, so he does not take them seriously. He explained, Mil called and said she suggested a present for Stacy's birthday, which you refused, and now she's mad at you. I responded, yes, she wanted your child to be given as a present to your sister. Do you want that? For a brief while, he assumed I was joking and making everything up. He was laughing and rolling on the floor as I told him the full story. Then alarmed, he asked, what is she even smoking? I made it obvious to him that I would not accept her demands. My husband reassured me, we are not having any more children, and we are definitely not giving one to Stacy. The following day was Sunday. We were both at home, relaxing on the couch and enjoying our day off, when Mil arrived at our house. I excused myself and went to my room, explaining that I was exhausted and needed to rest. Mil stopped me and said she came here to apologize for the previous day and begged me to hear her out. I was relieved that she had finally come to her senses. She apologized for not providing enough context in her request. She went on to explain, you know, Stacy is turning 30 next year and has been unmarried for a long time. It is driving her insane. She requires a distraction in life, and having a baby would be an excellent way to keep her happy. First and foremost, a newborn is a fully fledged human being, not cotton candy, brought in to keep children happy. If the spoilt brat requires distractions or a purpose in life, why doesn't she find a job? But no, the princess does not work. She doesn't move a finger about the house. By the way, she still lives with my in-laws because she has no income. She avoids home duties because her nails would get chipped. If you meet her, you'll notice that her brain hasn't developed since her 14th birthday. Her room's paint is still pink, and she has a large collection of pink outfits. She knows nothing about the world around her. She will be unfamiliar with the capital city or the country's president. All she knows is that a large sum of money suddenly arrives on her card, which she recklessly spends. I responded, if Stacy is so keen on having a baby, why doesn't she adopt one? Mil laughed and said, don't be lazy. It's been a while since you were pregnant, so get the equipment back to work. Adopted newborns pose a significant risk. Who knows what diseases run in their family? It's safe with you folks. Can't you do this for your SIL? I looked at my spouse as if to plead, would you please say something? He chuckled and called Mil's suggestion stupid. He stated that I had a lot of motherly responsibilities as well as a career to manage, and that I couldn't have another baby in the thick of it all. He also commented on how strange it would be if her brother was the father of her child. My mother-in-law simply replied, why not? Maria's sister-in-law was a surrogate for her daughter, so what's the big deal if your wife does the same for Stacy? I was like, wait a minute, that was surrogacy. Maria's sister-in-law carried Maria's daughter's child because she was unable to conceive owing to medical reasons. Here, things are not the same. If Stacy had a medical concern, we might have offered to help her carry the baby. The situation here is different. You're asking us to make a baby as if we were a machine. My partner had advised, Stacy should find a guy, settle down with him, and have her own family rather than complicating the situation here. Mil began sobbing and lamented, my little girl has tried so many times to find a man, but you know how awful men are these days. She pointed at me and said, you're a lucky woman to have my son, but sweetheart, not everyone is as fortunate as you. Stacy can't be with just any regular man. You know she has great expectations. The man should treat her like we do. I responded, yeah, of course, the last man Stacy dumped was because he didn't buy her an overly expensive Gucci bag. Mil attempted to justify her pampered princess, but I jumped up and stated, I'm nauseated from this discussion and need to relax. Once more, we will not have a child to give CL as a birthday present. After a time, my spouse entered the bedroom. He cuddled me and attempted to lighten my melancholy. I asked him what he had told his mother. He told me that he had made it plain that we would not have any more children and that they should quit harassing us. He claimed Mil stormed out of the house in rage. Can you imagine how ridiculous this situation is? I want to bang my head against a wall, or bang theirs to make them see sense. Update 1. Hello everyone, and thank you for connecting with my post. Some of the comments were just amusing. You're correct in stating that Stacy is psychologically something. I feel the same way. Both Stacy and Mil need to have their heads checked. Perhaps they were buried under pounds of makeup, lol. If there had been any other regular person, they would have backed off after the previous talk. But now we're dealing with two maniacs. Until recently, It was just MIL, but Stacy has also gotten involved. I tell you, she is 100 times more difficult to talk to since she does not grasp logic. As I said in my previous report, Miel wrecked my Sunday with her baby-making pitch. A week later, on the following Sunday, bam! She appears again with her adorable doll. They seem to have promised to destroy my day off. Stacy entered wearing a skirt and a comfortable blouse. This was the first time I had seen her without her very tiny clothes, and her hair and nails were flawless. Mill pointed and asked, "Do you see? Stacy has already begun dressing like a mama." So this was the cause for her new fashion sense. Do they truly believe that changing your clothes will make you a mommy? Change your clothes and you're ready to be a mother. Stacy smirked at me and replied, "I'm in. Whatever I do." Then she went to hug her older brother, as if she hadn't seen him in a long time. "Remember, I said she acts like a 14-year-old sweetie pie." She cried, as if we were all standing far apart. "When is the good news coming?" My husband appeared foolish and asked, "What's the good news?" She smirked and added, "I know you want to surprise me with your kid for my 30th birthday, but Mom is a spoiler. I now know what your plan is. I'm overjoyed to be the mother of a gorgeous little girl. I have already started buying for her." My husband interrupted her mid-sentence, and I'm glad he did because I was going to slap her skull. He said, "That is not true, we're not having a baby, much less giving one as a present." For a long time, she assumed he was merely attempting to mask the surprise. How delusional can you be? When she discovered she wasn't getting a kid as a gift, she screamed at me, "Why not? You have always been harsh to me, this is your time to set things right. Come on, get a nice tiny baby doll for me." I answered, "Stacy, we don't run a baby supply company where you can purchase a gorgeous baby girl and receive one. Do you even know how babies are made?" She relaxed and confessed, "You know, I've always wanted a baby girl. I have so much love in me that I want to shower it on my baby. You're all depriving me of that. That baby will be really lucky to have me as her mother. I will raise her to be a confident and accomplished woman. I am confident that you will not be disappointed." You see, that is why I said you couldn't reason with her. This is mindless. First and foremost, do you believe she is in the appropriate mind to have a baby? She doesn't even realize that I have no control over my baby's gender. You don't get to choose as you would with a lipstick palette. Second, this witch has never carried a baby in her arms. When my children were babies, she used to chase them away afraid they might spit and stain her hair and clothes. Even now she won't let my daughter near her because she's terrified she'll damage her nails or hair. Can anyone envision this mother changing a diaper or swaddling a baby in the middle of the night? Furthermore, I cannot go through a torturous 9 months of pregnancy, then experience the agonizing pain of birth, only to hand over my child to this spoiled princess and watch her transform the baby into a miniature version of herself. Stacy was still rambling on about how she'd be an excellent mother, but I had lost myself in the sentiments I'd expressed above. Suddenly, I stood up and said, "Look, Stacy. I know you're going to hate me for this. You already hate me. So it doesn't matter. I am not going to have a baby for you. Do you understand it, or should I write it down for you? Because it appears that you and your mother have lost both your hearing and your mind." My husband motioned for me to calm down, but I had lost my mind with their madness. I told them I didn't want to talk about it any further, and if they kept bothering me, I'd block them from my residence. I went into my room and closed the door. I'm not sure if I overstepped my boundaries, but look at them. I cannot put into words how toxic they are. My husband tried to indicate that I was being too outspoken, but I was so upset with everyone that he didn't dare say anything else. He just informed me that his mother and sister had called him a simp and then departed. I don't care what people say, he has to quit being a nice guy to everyone. I was expecting another showdown this Sunday, but it's been quiet so far, and I hope it continues. I just want this inconvenience to cease. Update 2. Oh no, how could I have thought things would end so peacefully? Following the explosion, the next 2 weeks were quiet and tranquil. I felt so at ease without MIL showing up at our door. But God, it wasn't silent at all. There was a flurry of activity going on online that I was completely unaware of. Stacy had been defaming me on social media, alleging that I was taking away her chance to become a mother. She describes herself as a beauty guru and posts makeup tutorials. She has a respectable following on her account. I'm not extremely active on social media because I have a life outside of the screen, with 2 children and a real job. Anyway, Stacy said that her brother was game to have a baby for her, but I denied it. She stated that she has always wanted to be a mother, but because she is unmarried, she has had no luck with adoption. Such a lie. They never even attempted to adopt, and if they had, I'm sure she would have failed the adoption interview. Stacy said a lot of things to put me in a negative light. She said I was denying her a kid because she was unmarried and I held conservative, old-fashioned attitudes. I wanted to say that I was denying her the kid because she was stupid. I had no idea about her hatred campaign until my husband's aunt called and asked why I was doing this to Stacy. That was when I read everything. It was amusing how her foolish friends and relatives made me out to be the villain. Even if what she said is accurate, I have the right to say no. It is my body, and I may refuse. My husband encouraged me to ignore it, that it will pass like a season. I originally ignored it, but how can you not read public comments made against you? We are not that thick-skinned. I understood Stacy saw my quiet as weakness and was trash-talking me even more. My buddies and I devised a strategy to make Stacy pay for her actions. I called her and said, "I'm very concerned about the web campaign you're waging against me. The negativity is destroying my reputation. So I'm considering having a child for you." Yeah, I said it to please her ego. My reputation is ruined. I don't care what she or her foolish followers think of me, but she deserved to be put in her proper place. She's been a pain in my side for a long time, and it's finally time to deal with her. I responded, "Stacy, why don't you come over, and we can discuss a few things before we proceed." She was ecstatic, believing she had defeated me. When she came to my place, I replied, "Since I've agreed to your demands, why don't we go live and tell everyone you're having a baby soon? It would help to clear up any poor reviews, and you'd get a nice viewing time." She agreed right away because she enjoys social networking. We went live and I said, "I have agreed to have a baby for Stacy, so let's take some questions for the future mom." Stacy was so pleased with her victory that she had no idea what she was heading into. I responded, "So Stacy, what plans do you have for the baby?" She giggled and exclaimed, "Oh, I'm so delighted to be a mother to a baby girl. I had already started buying for her. I'm going to make her look like a celebrity from the moment she's born. I will never leave her without makeup. She will always have to appear perfect and acceptable." I didn't explicitly state that no one could guarantee she'd have a baby girl, but I let the audience educate her on the subject. Her response had already outraged many people and the video was filled with harsh comments and trolls. Stacy was so focused on expressing herself that she missed everything else. I replied, "That's lovely, Stacy, but what about when the baby is fussy and crying? How are you going to handle that?" She responded, "The girls in our family do not cry, do they? I mean, I have never seen your daughter weep. She's always well dressed and calm." Without making her feel silly, I said, "That's because you've only seen her for a short time. Every baby cries. Every tidy, well-dressed infant is the result of many hours of hard effort by the mother." Her answer was, "Then you can take care of the crying, and when she's calm, I'll dress her up in cute frilly dresses and matching necklaces and tiaras, and I'll put makeup on her." I couldn't stop giggling and told Stacy, "Babies cry all day and night. Are you suggesting you'll bring her to me every time she cries and then take her back after she's finished?" She exclaimed, "Yes, that's correct." "Why not?" I could no longer pretend and let out an evil laugh. She responded, "Are you trying to scare me off? How difficult could it be? You did it and I can do it too. I am so much better than you. I have more followers and a better fashion sense than you." She abruptly ended the live video while ranting. She was angry at me for grilling her on live camera, but she had no idea how much damage it had done to her. She stated, "We're game for the baby." As she walked away, I smiled calmly. My friend taped the entire live session. I wrote a lengthy essay detailing how Stacy and her mother had been pressuring me to have a child and give it to her as a birthday present. I methodically underlined all of the red flags that indicated why Stacy should not be trusted with a child. Her responses during the live stream were enough to let folks realize what an airheaded woman she is. I stated all of the additional things regarding Stacy that were not included in her responses. I tagged her in the post and shared it after midnight, thinking the princess would be sleeping. She'd wake up the next day and by the time she untagged herself, thousands of people would have seen the message. As expected, my post went viral, owing to Stacy's followers. Tagging her in the post allowed her fans to troll her extensively, with comments such as, "How could someone with such a low IQ even exist on this planet?" A single comment said, "Forget about being a mother, this woman shouldn't be left alone on the streets." Following this internet argument, my mother-in-law called me. Before she could say anything, I told her, "Before you say anything, please know that you are being recorded and I will not hesitate to post it publicly." My God, she hung up and did not call back. I didn't hear from the pampered princess again because I warned Emil that I was going to record all of their calls and conversations, as well as any attempts to make trouble at my place. It was quite satisfying to put them in their place. My husband and I are still giggling while reading the haters' comments on Stacy's video. It's just hilarious. My husband made me stop believing in soulmates. Now, after 15 years, he's finally opened up and strengthened our love even more. My husband made me believe soulmates aren't real. I am using a different account so that my husband doesn't know. Before meeting my current husband, I was married to my ex-husband Dave. Dave and I met when we were 5 years old. He moved into our neighborhood when he was 5. He was this cute boy next door. We became inseparable. Even our parents joked that when we would be adults we would be married. Ever since I knew the concept of marriage, I was determined that I would marry Dave. We were like soulmates. We had the same interests, the same hobbies, the similar thoughts. He was my first everything. My first kiss, my first boyfriend. The guy I lost my virginity to. Among our friends we were the perfect couple. After graduating high school, we immediately got married. I got into a good school, but I decided to study with Dave. We got married right after we finished high school. Our parents helped us find an apartment closer to our school. We worked hard. We would often talk about having kids. On our 6th anniversary we decided that we would try for a baby next year. I still remember the day when we were teenagers and cuddling. We already decided what our babies' names would be. During our 7th year of marriage, my mom got sick, so I had to stay with her for a while. I was planning to do something special for our 7th year anniversary. So I left early to surprise him. I went to my bedroom and there I saw my husband fucking another girl in our marital bed. I can never get that image out of my head. My husband saw me and his face turned pale. I don't know what happened but I threw up right in the spot. My husband was giving me the usual "it's not what it looks like, I am sorry. It was a mistake." I locked myself in the bathroom. I somehow mustered my strength and called my friend to pick me up and just don't listen to Dave. When my friend arrived she charged at Dave. She grabbed some of my things and we left. I was in a catatonic stage at that point. Eventually my parents knew, they supported whatever decision I would make. Dave's parents however wanted us to be together. There was a huge fight but eventually we settled for divorce. My whole fairy tale fantasy just shattered. I was spiraling into depression. My parents booked me for therapy. For 2 years I was like a living corpse. After that my friend pushed me to go on a date. I did but no one even came close to Dave. I was searching for Dave in every guy. But they all failed to live up to the expectation. That is when I met my now husband Jay. Jay was the opposite of Dave. Dave was funny, he would be the life of the party. I remember one time he made me laugh so hard that I fell from my chair. But Jay was not funny like Dave. He would use humor only as clapbacks and if he wants to insult someone. He was also very stoic and closed off. Pretty boring to my taste. On our first date, I asked him some questions like what is your favorite movie? He told me he doesn't watch movies. He likes reading? He didn't even ask me a thing. Except for my educational background. He talked mostly about my field of work. But he was not interested in me. We ate dinner in silence. I was 100% sure he would not call me. But 2 days later he did. He asked me out on a second date. I was skeptical of whether or not I should go. But my friend insisted. I gave it another try. Second date went slightly better than the first. He talked a bit more. Asked a few questions. We were taking it slow. He was opening up until the 6th date when he finally hooked up. TMI, it was amazing. I am someone who has a snack after having sex. I was craving for some so I asked him if I could grab something from his pantry. Even a bread and cheese sandwich will do. He told me to stay there and he went out. I was kinda confused. He came back after 20 minutes with takeout food. It was something I really liked, orange chicken. I asked how he knew. He told me you told me on our previous date. I melted right there. Dave and I have been together for most of my life, but he never made the effort of going out and get me something. That's when I knew even if he was not my soulmate I was madly in love with him. We dated for 3 years and got married. I came to know about Jay's family too. His mom and dad were drug addicts who died of overdose. He was homeless for a while but worked his way up. Throughout our marriage I was very happy. He was different from Dave because whenever he would see me doing chores he would ask need help. He helped me through my trauma from Dave by arranging a therapist that specializes in infidelity. He may not be a person of words but his actions tell me that he loves me. When I was pregnant with our daughter, I would wake him up in the middle of the night to either get me food or rub my feet. He would say yes ma'am, and get to work. I love him. Even after 15 years of marriage my love has not stopped. He is still the stoic man I fell in love with. After meeting him, I stopped believing in the concept of a soulmate. He was not mine, but we somehow made it work. I love you, Jay. Thanks for being there in my life. And anyone who is wondering what happened to Dave, he is getting his third divorce. His mom blames me for his downfall, but she refuses to see that her son cheated on his every marriage. Edit: I am sorry if there was any typing mistake. I am typing on my phone and the autocorrect is acting nuts. I tried to turn it off, but it didn't work. Relevant comments. Commenter: who knows, maybe Jay is your soulmate. He seems to be more ideally suited to you from the beginning than Dave ever was. OOP: from the outside we do not look like soulmates. Dave and I were the typical girl next door and boy next door kind of people. Jay was more closed off. Initially when I was dating him, he was really rude in my opinion. He also has a bad temper towards people who screw up. But other than that, he is good and kind. He helps those who genuinely need help. Commenter: after reading this, all I can say is fuck Dave, metaphorically, and fuck Jay, literally, in several positions, then have a nice dessert. I'm glad to hear you are happy. Hope you, Jay, and your kids have many, many more happy years ahead of you. OOP: fuck Jay, literally, in several positions, then have a nice dessert. I have been doing that for 18 years, lol. And he still gets me snack. Commenter: his mom blames me for his downfall. Because it can't be the fault of her fucking child being an immoral, faulty human being, could it? I am poly. I have a different attitude to sex around a relationship, but promises are promises regardless. Commitment is commitment no matter what flavor, and Dave is clearly emotionally incomplete. I never believed in soulmates, from childhood, but you know when it works, when it's right, you just had to have a trial marriage to refine your definition. OOP: according to his mom, he was devastated when I wanted divorce. She tried to convince me to stay with him even after knowing he cheated. She was angry at me and my parents when I said no. She blames me because she thinks that if I had stayed, her son would not have become a serial cheater because I could fix him. His other marriage failed because he was a mess because of me. Not because he was fucking other people on the side. Commenter: Dave was never your soulmate. Jay was. Just took time to find him. OOP: when I asked Jay about if he believes in soulmates, he told me, I don't believe that crap. It's just like a horoscope. People believe in it because it makes them feel better. A lot of potential good relationships get broken because of this crap. I was kinda devastated that he doesn't believe in soulmates. Can you believe in these 18 years, we have only said I love you only 5 times as far as I can count. I want to say it more. I said I love you to my husband after 5 years. My husband, 47M, and I, 46F, have been together for 18 years and married for 15. My husband is not the type who always shows his feelings. He is very stoic, smiles on very few occasions, and maintains a routine. Some even say that he is a robot. But I don't think so. I am someone who is very outgoing and completely the opposite of him. Before I was married to him, I was married to someone else who cheated on me. I used to say I love you a lot in my first marriage. But after my divorce, I had some sort of aversion to those words. Over the last 18 years, we have said I love you only 5 times. First time was when we were dating, second was on our wedding day, third and fourth when our daughter and son were born, and the 5th was 5 years ago on Christmas when we were really tipsy because of the drinks. I wrote a post about how I met him and how we got together, but it made me realize that we haven't said I love you to each other for a long time. But it didn't bother me. Even if he never said it, he always shows that he loves me in his actions. He does chores for me, he would always give me a foot massage, make me my favorite dish, even kiss me out of the blue. I do not have any complaints. He is the best husband anyone could ever ask for. But this was something that has been in the back of my mind for a while. We cuddle, we hang out, we make love, but still no I love yous. I would love to hear it and say it more often, but somehow it just makes me nervous. I decided to buckle up and just say it. It's just 3 words. So yesterday when he was reading a book on the couch, I stood in front of him and said, I love you. He looked at me and was confused. I repeated it. For the first time, I could see him get flustered. He told me okay. I was a little disappointed by his response. I thought he just didn't love me anymore. Later that night when I was lying down, he came to our bedroom and told me that he was sorry for his response. That it caught him off guard. He told me that he loves me a lot. And not even a day goes by that he doesn't feel lucky to have me in his life. I was tearing up. That was better than my confession. I asked him why we don't say that often. He told me that he doesn't say it because throughout his entire life no one has said it to him except for me. His parents were drug addicts who cared less for him. He had to start working at 14. He grew up in hardships, so saying I love you is weird for him. But also he feels like we didn't have to tell each other when we express it with our actions way more. I told him I want to say it more now and want him to say it back if that's okay with him. I saw him smile for a while and he said it is fine as long as I want it. I don't think we need to say it when we know we love each other a lot. We will probably stop saying it after a few days and go back to our mundane events lol. A lot of you people have been asking me and personally messaging me about Jay's upbringing and how he managed to survive. Well, I am not sure if I'm the right person to talk about his personal life. I mean, I heard some parts which really made me cry. Therefore, I will try to summarize it. So my husband Jay is an only child. His mom and dad were from a poor family. They were drug addicts. His household was a mess. He remembers his father pushing him down the stairs when he was like 8. Jay mostly grew up with his grandfather, his mom's dad. As far as I know, his mom was not allowed to come to his grandfather's house. Jay mostly spent his weekdays at his house. His mom and dad didn't care. They were always high and had odd visitors. His grandfather taught him a lot of things. Like handling tools, woodwork, electric repair stuff. Ever since he was little, with some advice from his grandfather, he learned that his parents are very useless. He has to survive on his own. All they know is how to do drugs and invite people to have group sex. He started doing odd jobs like dog sitting, car and window washing, gardening. He also tutored from time to time. Shortly after, his parents died of overdose. He became a permanent resident of his grandfather's house. He worked so that he could afford to go to college. His grandfather had little money for him. But it wasn't enough. He thought about joining the army at 18, but he failed the physical test. When he was 17, his grandfather died of a heart attack. His grandfather lived in a rented house, so Jay couldn't live there anymore. He was forced to live in a homeless shelter throughout his high school. He even got bullied and got in trouble for standing up for his bullies. But since he was a good student, he didn't face serious repercussions. He left the homeless shelter when a pastor from their local church took him in. He knew Jay because he worked in the church for a while. The pastor was a nice guy. He funded his living and also helped him get a scholarship to a good university. Jay studied finance and business. His entire childhood, he lived in poverty. So he was obsessed with learning how to make money. He made some connections which landed him a good part-time job during his final year. I met Jay through my friend. She worked in the same company as him. He worked as an investment banker at the time. And the rest you all know. This is pretty much it. I understand why he is so stoic and doesn't show his emotions. I once asked out of curiosity that he saw the harsh reality of life but still how he manages to stay good. He once told me about this couple whose children he used to tutor. They were a really happy family in his eyes. The husband loved his wife. He mentioned that the husband would always have a hand on his wife's body as a form of affection. Their children were also well behaved and had a good childhood. From that moment he knew he wanted a family like that. Because he never had a complete family. But he was sure that somebody would not be able to love him because he doesn't know how to show love. Throughout his entire childhood he has only seen his parents fight and cheat on each other in front of each other. That really destroyed his perception of love. If it wasn't for that couple, he probably wouldn't believe that there are people in this world who can love each other for life. It is a little wrong of me to say he displays no emotions. He does, but on rare occasions. I remember the day our daughter was born. Jay held her and cried loudly. He kept repeating, "I will protect you. I will never leave you." He did say "I love you" to both me and her. Same thing happened when our son was born. I mean, it gave me an idea to just pop out babies so that I can see his emotional face, haha. But anyways, I know he does love me and our little family. He always holds me tight whenever we are cuddling. He is really good with my parents. My parents also adore him. Sometimes, it just makes me cry knowing that he has been through a lot and I have lived such a sheltered life. Sometimes, I feel like I don't deserve him because he is very kind and a good person. Also, yeah, we do say "I love you" a lot more now. Final update. I just wanted to give big thanks to everyone who has been kind and supportive. I cannot imagine that so many people will come through because of my post. A lot of you suggested therapy. I did in the past, but my husband brushed it off by saying his past rarely bothers him. Thanks to people on Reddit, I suggested to him some articles on PTSD and childhood trauma. He studied for a bit and found a therapist for him to help him with his trauma. He only had 2 sessions till now. Few days ago he came home from work and I went to greet him like usual. He pulled in for a big hug and started sobbing. I told him it's okay. We went to our bedroom where we sat down and talked. He told me that he was sorry for being so ice cold all these years. He opened up more and said he was afraid to confront his demons, so he just kept them back in his head. He had trouble expressing how he felt. He felt guilty that he didn't say he loves more often. I am just paraphrasing what he told me. I love you with all my heart. I know I don't say it, but I feel it every day and every moment. I am sorry for taking away all those years from you, for not expressing my love for you. Words cannot express what you actually mean to me. You gave me my kids, made my house a home. I never had that growing up. I always wanted that, and you made it happen. I am sorry that I was so cold and never said I love you more. Because I do. I love you a lot. I want to make it up to you. I don't want to waste another second of my life burying those emotions anymore. It feels good to see him vulnerable for the first time in his life. I cried with him that night. We talked a lot about our marriage and the times we spent together. It was a real bonding experience. From that day on, he has been really attentive towards me. He would always come home as early as possible to simply have more time with me. We cuddle a lot and also make love. Except this time it feels new and different. Like a newfound love. He has been saying I love you to my kids. My son is confused and my daughter just said, "Dad, you're weird." He is thinking about planning a trip for just the two of us because it has been really long since we had gone on a trip alone. So thanks to Reddit. You gave me a new version of my husband and probably strengthened my marriage with him. Not that there were problems, but I hope my husband would not be so haunted by his demons now. Mom chose my step-siblings over me and demanded I share my deceased dad's college fund. Now I'm fighting for my independence and future. Before I get into what happened, here's some backstory. I'm a 17-year-old girl who lives with my mother, 43F, stepfather, and two stepsisters. I have a stepbrother, Jackson, who is a year older than me, and a stepsister, Emma, who is 2 years younger. We all attend the same high school, but we have no mutual acquaintances and have never been close. My mother and their father married after nearly 5 years of dating. The wedding occurred 3 years ago, but our families had been living together for 6 years, so the wedding was really a formality. My father went away when I was quite young, so I never got to spend much time with him. I scarcely remember him because I was so young when Dad died. My parents were never married and my father's family disapproved of my mother since she was a party girl with a bad reputation in their area. So they lived together for a brief period but didn't marry because his parents would have undoubtedly kicked him out. He was diagnosed with leukemia in its late stages at the age of 27, and it was too late to intervene. Fortunately, Dad had time to organize his affairs, and he was able to establish an education fund for me, so I wouldn't have to worry about the future, and my mother wouldn't have to force herself to work hard after his death. I've known about it since his lawyer informed me when I was very little. The lawyer was in charge of the money flow, but after I turned 18, I would have complete control over the fund. For a long time after my father died, it was just me and my mother, and I grew accustomed to it. Then, when I was about 8 years old, my stepfather entered the picture, and after a while of dating, we moved in together. My mother moved out of the town where we used to reside because she found it too traumatic to dwell where she and my father met. I've never met my paternal grandparents because they were never interested in meeting me. We periodically visit my mother's parents, and they are kind enough, but my mother's family is not very close. When I moved in with my stepfather and his children, I had high hopes that I'd finally have a large family. When I was younger, I had a lot of hopes, but unfortunately, my new family did not meet them. I don't blame them, but it was quite disappointing for me. When I was younger, it wasn't that they didn't make me feel welcome or treated me poorly, but there was something strange about everyone's energy. We all lived together, but we never felt like a family, and I never connected with my stepfather or his children. We lived in the same house, but they never tried to make me feel welcome or get to know me. I tried several times, but they did not appear enthused, so I gave up after a few months. I understood that we were more like glorified roommates than true family members, and that was it. I did not romanticize it. My mother, however, told a different narrative. They treated her differently. The mood toward my mother was radically different. They treated her as if she were a member of the family. I could be mistaken, but I believe that my step-siblings and stepdad were pleased to include my mother and play happy family with her while excluding me was due to my stepdad's ex-wife being a nightmare. I've never met her, but according to what I've heard, she was a total gold digger who left my stepfather nearly bankrupt following their divorce. He had to start again in his life, and to make matters worse, he had to care for my step-siblings on his own after their mother gave up custody and abandoned them to be with her new partner shortly after their divorce. Meeting a woman like my mother, who is the polar opposite of his ex-wife, was probably beneficial to all of them, but I wasn't really needed in that situation. They made me feel like an afterthought. I can't quantify it or give particular examples, but it was all about vibes and energy. Despite being a member of the family, I always felt that I wasn't really a part of it. My only consolation was the thought that I might have been overthinking things, something I used to tell myself when things got too much for me. It is strange to admit this, but I was genuinely jealous because it appeared that my mother had finally found her people, while I remained on the outside. After a few years, I began to dislike everyone because I felt left behind. I never mentioned it to anyone since it seemed tiny and insignificant, and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. That was how life was, and while I wasn't happy about it, I was still content. Now back to what happened a few days earlier. I've been researching universities for the past several weeks because I'm about to graduate in a few months and need to start sending out applications. I wasn't concerned about the money since, as I previously stated, my mother had always informed me that there was a fund put aside for me, which I intended to use. But then, a few days ago, my mother said she needed to speak with me about something very serious. She explained that my stepfather had been unable to save enough money for his children to attend college, so she asked me to assist the family and allow my step-siblings to use the money from my college fund as well. Jackson had taken a gap year and was set to enter college at the same time as me, so that was the primary focus of our chat. Legally, my mother had no influence over the assets because my father's will clearly stated that only I would be able to choose where the money was spent after I turned 18. To be honest, I did not want to split the money with my step-siblings. For starters, I didn't consider them family, and neither did they. Second, even if I don't use the entire amount that my father set aside for me, I'd like to keep it for myself. That kind of money could help me get a head start. Useful for when I obtain my own apartment and starting living on my own until I start earning. I had already saved a lot because I went to public school rather than private, so my mother did not have to spend any money on my education thus far. I was also an excellent student, so I hoped to receive a scholarship at whatever institution I applied to and enrolled in. Money had never been a problem for me, but as I grew older and approached 18 in a few months, I began to consider saving and earning. Giving money from my fund to my step-siblings didn't seem like a good idea, so I informed my mother that I would not be sharing those cash with them since I did not believe it was necessary. If Jackson truly wanted to attend college, he could simply take out a student loan, like millions of other students do. My mother was not pleased with my response and accused me of being selfish. I didn't even disagree. I was being selfish, and I saw nothing wrong with it. So instead of battling with her, I simply informed her that I was being selfish, which was perfectly acceptable because I did not consider my step-siblings family. That's when my mother yelled at me, as if what I said was a criminal violation. It took me a few seconds to realize she was losing her mind because I had given her the truth. I did not consider my step-sibling family. The double standard was ridiculous. On the one hand, my family had treated me as an outsider for the past 8 years, and she never seemed to notice. Or perhaps she did, but she didn't care. However, when it came to me, I was suddenly expected to consider them family and treat them as such for no apparent reason. I attempted to speak to her quietly and without yelling, but it was pointless because she was already yelling at me and calling me ungrateful, among other things. So I waited for her to stop yelling before telling her that she could scream all she wanted, but I wouldn't change my mind. All that screaming at me would do was alienate me even more and make me less likely to support them in any manner. My mother calmed down a little after I said that, and I assumed we were finally going to have a sensible conversation in which I could express my feelings. But that was foolish of me. I had forgotten that in this environment, my sentiments were irrelevant. What mattered was whether my mother, stepfather, and step-siblings were content. None of them seemed to care about my pleasure. After my mother cooled down, she informed me that I had a week to decide, but if I didn't agree to divide the college fund with my step-siblings, she would have to kick me out of the family. I assumed she was joking because it looked so ludicrous, but she assured me otherwise. With my birthday approaching in less than a month, she stated that she would soon no longer be legally compelled to let me remain with them because I would not be a child. So I'd be on my own if I didn't agree to share the college fund that my father had set aside for me. I couldn't believe my own mother would say such a thing and put me in such a tough situation for the sake of my step-siblings, especially since I was meant to be her own flesh and blood. She advised me to tread carefully and think it over, since this decision could cost me everything. She then exited the room, leaving me to absorb what she had just said. It was extremely insulting to be treated that way by my own mother, and I decided that day that I was going to get out of this house no matter what the cost. So I began talking to my friends and told them that I needed help finding an apartment of my own because I was planning to move out for my 18th birthday. I told them what my mother had stated and emphasized the severity of the situation. I knew that after I turned 18, I'd have control over the money and could select where to spend it. Yes, I would have to stick to a budget and carefully select my college degree, but it was worth it since it meant I could move out and live on my own instead of putting up with my family. Or forcing them to tolerate me. After that chat with my mother, it became clearer than ever that I was not welcome in that house at all, and I had been treated as an afterthought all these years. I realized I had not overthought anything. In fact, I may have been underthinking things because I had never expected this. A few days later, a friend informed me that she had spoken with a cousin who was also applying to the same universities as I was, because we shared similar interests. Her cousin planned to live in an apartment since she wanted to be self-sufficient from the start. My buddies suggested I contact her cousin, and if we ended up attending the same college, we could rent an apartment together. I thought it was a brilliant idea and phoned her cousin right away. We figured things out, and I informed her of my condition. She was empathetic, and I could tell she was a pleasant person with whom I would get along, so that was resolved. The only thing left to worry about was where I'd live until college started, which was still a few months away. Fortunately, my friends said I could stay with them until college started. It was a dirty and risky scheme, but I was willing to go along with it since anything was preferable to living with my mother and her family. After the dispute with my mother, I was treated horribly. They weren't yelling at me or being blatantly harsh, but rather in a humiliating way. They'd all banded together against me, treating me as if I were the most repulsive thing alive. Every time I entered a room, everyone would stop chatting and leave, returning to their respective spaces. They constantly gave me the side eye and refused to speak to me, as if I had done something terrible. It was so humiliating that I wanted to run away. It took a long time to plan something for myself, but I was determined. As soon as my friends were ready to take me in, I would depart. When my mother asked me again whether I had changed my mind, I decided to tell her the truth and leave. I assured her I hadn't altered my mind and was indeed intending to depart. I said that the way she and her family had been treating me over the last week was nothing short of crazy, and I couldn't take it any longer. I told her I'd already spoken with friends and would be staying with them until I could start college and relocate far away. I made it clear that I did not want to see her again. So she might kick me out. It would make no difference to me. I already had a plan, so I wasn't surprised when my mother yelled at me again, asking me to leave since her house wasn't for selfish, ungrateful brats like me. I left, relieved to be rid of them. But it wasn't the end of my plans. During my time alone in my room, I had been planning methods to retaliate against my mother. My life had taken a bad turn after she married my stepfather, and she didn't seem to mind because she was content with her new family. I had tried to be pleased for her while suppressing my emotions, but it was clear now that she did not care about me at all. Her stepchildren were more important to her than I was. The way she treated me made me feel terrible, and I was determined not to let it go unanswered. So as soon as I got out of the home, I resolved to confront her for who she truly was. The only reason I waited a week to speak out about her unreasonable expectations was that I didn't want her to have access to me or the power to express her disappointment in me. I knew nobody in their right mind would ever agree with what she had said to me. After moving in with a friend, I decided to go online and write a post about my mother. I wrote about how my mother raged at me because I refused to pay to my step-siblings' education fund. I explained that none of them had ever treated me like family, and my mother didn't seem to care. It only became an issue when I handled them in the same manner. I discussed the double standards and how my mother had almost completely forgotten about me after moving in with her new family. I also stated that I considered my mother to be the single most selfish person on the earth because of how she had been treating me simply for saying no to something utterly stupid. Any rational person in my situation would have said no, especially because the money she was discussing was left exclusively for me by my father. It wasn't for anyone else to use, and I didn't think it was fair of her to want me to share it with people who had never treated me like a member of their family. I might have contemplated it if my step-siblings had been good to me at some point, but that was not the case. I was quite frustrated and I vented my feelings in that single post. I knew this would have a severe influence on my mother, especially because many of her friends and their children followed me on social media, but I didn't care at the time. All I wanted was to get back at her. To be honest, my mother had always been my sole source of support and happiness because I only had one parent to rely on. My grandparents were rarely in touch with me, so my mother's preference for my step-siblings over me felt like a major betrayal. I was really hurt and wanted to express myself without regard for the repercussions. So I made the post, and the results were precisely as I expected. My mother sent me multiple texts, claiming that I had ruined her life because everyone had seen the post, which had been shared numerous times. My mother was well liked within her circle of acquaintances, so it was not surprising that people were seeking for an excuse to gossip about her. I played right into their hands. She attempted to call me multiple times, but I did not answer or react to any SMS. I was terrible and had hoped that writing the post would make me feel better, but the messages my mother gave me made me feel even worse about my decision. I could see from her text that she was quite torn about this. She said things like she never expected me to do this, that she thought she raised me to be nice and sympathetic, but I was the complete opposite, and she couldn't believe I was her daughter anymore. Then she hauled out the big guns and informed me that if my father were alive today and saw this vindictive and malicious side of me, he would be tremendously disappointed and would no longer want to be linked to me. That really got to me. And I started feeling like I'd done something bad. I began reconsidering everything, which led me here. At this time, I'm not sure if it was appropriate for me to refuse to share my college fund with my step-siblings. I'm not sure if I should try to make things right with my mother and the others since I don't think I can face them after what I did. But this could also be a brilliant strategy to manipulate me, and if so, it's certainly working. That's why I need your assistance. Now that everyone knows the data, I can finally reach a conclusion. So am I bad for refusing to share my college cash with my step-siblings and then creating a negative post about my mother? Update 1. Hello and thank you so much for your response. A lot of you sent me very nice words, which made me feel better about myself and what I did. I suppose I needed that to see things for what they are. I was about to give my mother another chance just because I wanted to see the good in her. I wanted to think she wasn't a nasty person, but what kind of mother speaks and acts the way she did? She's just not a decent person, and it's time I accepted that rather than fighting it. So I blocked her so she couldn't contact me again. I knew if she texted me, it was solely to influence me or get that post removed. I do not want to take that post down. I want it to remain up till she apologizes to me. She knows where I am because my friend's mother informed her that I live with them, and she knows how to contact me. If she doesn't contact me, I'll consider it as an indication that she just cares about her reputation. Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since I moved out and started living with a friend. Since that post, I have had no touch with anyone in my family. I did attend school for a few days and bumped into Emily a couple of times, but she simply gave me a nasty look and like I didn't exist. Not unexpected, given that they've been pretending I don't exist for the previous 8 years, so it must be even simpler now. Anyway, my mother eventually came to see me last evening. She arrived with a black plastic garbage bag and put it in the living room, claiming it included all of my leftovers, basically everything I had managed to get into my duffel bag before leaving the house. It felt a little disrespectful that she had used a garbage bag to pack my belongings, and it was even more insulting when she threw everything on the living room floor, leaving me to gather it. My friend and her parents, who witnessed this, were appalled. They did not enjoy my mother's behavior and even took it upon themselves to quarrel with her over it. They advised her that given that I was her only daughter, she should have compassion for me instead of treating me so harshly. They really drilled her, and she didn't take it well. She informed them they had no right to discuss her parenting methods because they were the ones harboring a delinquent like me. I almost broke out laughing when she said that since I was not a delinquent, I was a scholar student and she knew it. I almost addressed it myself, but I didn't have to because my friend stuck up for me. She told my mother off, saying she was grateful her parents were not like mine and had a heart. It developed into a catfight after that, and my mother became enraged and fled. I was really grateful for my friend and her folks. I don't think they needed to stand up for me, but they did, and I couldn't be happier. This was probably the first time in my life that I had someone fight for me, and it was quite moving. But, in any case, I doubt my mother will return anytime soon because, after the reception she received yesterday, I wouldn't dare to show up around here again if I were her. I truly hope she doesn't show up because I'm tired of the drama. I simply want to go on with my life and start a new chapter, but I can't because she keeps reappearing. So I hope this is the last time I have to deal with her. Update 3. Hello everyone, long time no see. I've been MIA for a few months I believe, but you can't blame me. I've been applying to colleges, hoping to get into a good one with a scholarship. I've been working extremely hard and it has all paid off. I got into my first choice school, and I'm keeping to the strategy I devised a few months ago. My friend's cousin, who applied to the same universities, was also accepted, and we plan to rent an apartment and live together. She's a really sweet girl, and the fact that she's my friend's cousin is just icing on the cake since it allows me to stay in touch with everyone. The last few months have been really challenging for me emotionally, but my friends have helped me get through everything. I can't express how grateful I am to have such folks in my life. I know that many people with bad parents and families rely on their friends for emotional support, but I attempted to avoid it. However, now that I know how far my friends will go for me, I feel like they are family. I will always be grateful for everything individuals have done for me. Seriously, I don't think I could have gotten this far without everyone's help. Even the people here who reached out via message and said such encouraging things to help me get through this. It's just bizarre and funny that my mother hasn't texted me once since I moved out. She didn't care that I had unblocked her and she could now speak to me. That is how little I mean to her. But you and my pals advised me to believe in myself because I could accomplish it. It's pretty funny how strangers on the internet helped me more than my mother ever did. But that's all in the past. I'm looking forward to a fresh start here, and I'm quite thrilled about what the future holds. I overheard my girlfriend brutally mocking me to her best friend about our sex life. What happened next completely shattered our relationship. My girlfriend, Jenna, and I have been dating for just over 2 years. I am a veterinarian, and we met in my office when she brought her dog in for an ear infection. What should have been a 15-minute meeting grew into an hour-long discussion. I've never been so smitten by a woman before. Before Jenna, I lived the bachelor lifestyle and assumed I'd be unmarried forever. But that life of occasional flings was becoming old. Jenna is a charismatic woman with a large circle of acquaintances, her best buddy being Dylan, a gentleman from her hometown. I trust Jenna, but I'd be lying if I claimed I didn't care about their connection. I don't get angry or quarrel with her about it. She assures me that they've been friends their entire lives and have never had a sexual relationship. I understood that they were merely pals and attempted to buddy up with Dylan. He's been to the city 3 times and seems like a nice man, but he doesn't appear to like me much. Jenna claims he's simply being protective, but I get the impression he's jealous. Jenna finished graduate school this spring, but she's had a difficult time finding work. We've been living together for a year, and while I'm financially secure and don't mind covering expenditures, I've made it clear that if she gets a job, she must begin contributing. She texted me on Monday to say she had gotten a job, one she truly wanted, after some hard interviews. I was so pleased with her that I decided to surprise her by leaving work early and purchasing her favorite drink, Chinese takeout, flowers, and a necklace she adored from a boutique. I wanted to make the occasion exceptional. I returned home and entered the basement to get the hidden necklace, intending to surprise her. As I climbed the basement stairs, I overheard her talking on the phone and giggling excessively. It was cute, so I decided to surprise her. She was speaking with Dylan, which was not unusual. But then I noticed they were laughing at me. Specifically, about our sexual experiences. I heard her reply, "No, he doesn't even compare to my ex. My ex had at least 3 inches on me. I feel horrible every time I eat a mini carrot in front of him. It must be unpleasant for him to watch me munching on something his size." She chuckled and said, "His body is amazing as long as he keeps his boxers on." I don't care what people on Reddit say about the size of my member, but having her make fun of me in front of someone I already felt embarrassed about was extremely terrible. What made matters worse was that what she was saying wasn't accurate. I'm quite average, nothing spectacular, but certainly not comical. She also ridiculed me for being gorgeous but not super smart, which was strange given that I'm well educated. Hearing her rip me apart like that felt like a strike in the belly. I departed after that. Yes, I threw the flowers out the vehicle window and cried in the parking lot. I believe she heard the basement door close or saw my car go since she began messaging me shortly after, wondering when I was returning home. That was Monday, and I still haven't mentioned it. I'm not sure why. I guess I'm still absorbing things. It's extremely embarrassing and hurtful, but gosh, I adore this girl. I am not saying I will necessarily forgive her. I just want to emphasize how difficult this whole situation is for me. I know I should bring it up with her, but how? Any recommendations on how to begin this conversation? I am deeply upset and I'm not sure whether I can forgive her for this. TLDR. My girlfriend and her male buddy made fun of me about our sex life and my penis. It's quite hurtful stuff. I feel like a puppy that has just been kicked in the face. I am devastated, all jokes aside. I plan to propose within the next few months. I don't see how I can forgive her or remain with her. Advice? Edit. Wow, hey, thank you everybody. I simply wanted to say that I will surely split up with Jenna. I had a beer with 3 of my buddies tonight and told them everything. Their sentiments are similar to the majority of yours. Dump her and do it quick. I called my mother and told her about it. Yes, I told her everything, as embarrassing as it was. We are getting close, and I wanted her to know the complete tale. I've never heard her so outraged about anything. She knew I had purchased a ring for Jenna. I'll post an update once I finish it. It will most likely happen tomorrow, although I may not talk about it for a few days. I'm going to be a wreck emotionally. Thank you again for your comments, messages of support and encouragement. I never expected so many people to be rooting for me. Update. I, 33M, Overheard my girlfriend, 28F, make harsh fun of me in front of her best friend, 27M. When I say brutally, I actually mean brutally. Well, Reddit strangers, I stayed strong and broke up with Jenna on Thursday evening. This has honestly been the most dramatic few days of my life. I am fatigued. Things became really unpleasant on her end. Sorry for the lengthy post, a lot has transpired. At the recommendation of my friends, mother, brother, and many of you, I spoke with her in a private but still public setting. The idea was that someone who could be so harsh and reveal themselves as a liar would try to twist things and say she left me because I wounded her, or something similar. I'd like to believe she wouldn't do something like that, but who knows, especially after what has transpired. Better safe than sorry. I considered simply boxing up her belongings and breaking things up without explanation, but we've been together for nearly 2 years. I felt the best thing to do was face her gently and listen to her. Even if her explanation did not influence my choice to end our relationship, I wanted to give her the opportunity to explain. So I took her to a wine bar downtown with small private booths and half curtains. She had been saccharine sweet since Monday, which indicated that she either A. felt bad about what she did, B. believed I had overheard her, or C. had no idea why I had been aloof. She dressed quite smartly, and despite everything, I must confess she looked stunning. She was also quite loving and made provocative comments regarding future plans. Normally, my precious little baby carrot would have been overjoyed with this, but given the circumstances, it was difficult to appear normal. I had practiced what I was going to say several times, so as soon as we sat down and grabbed our wine, I started. I can't remember exactly what I said, my adrenaline was pumping, but I basically told her how much I loved her. How she's the first woman I've ever felt so close to that I opened myself totally and trusted her. I told her she was the only woman I'd ever considered marrying, but I didn't mention that I'd already bought the ring. I remarked that I hoped to have children with her in the coming years. She kept interrupting and claiming she loved me too. Then I looked her in the eyes and asked her directly why, if she loved me so much, she made fun of me in front of Dylan. Her expression seemed slightly satisfied. As expected, she initially denied it, claiming she had no idea what I was talking about. She stated that Dylan is aware of how much she loves me and would never make fun of me in front of him. I simply glanced at her and said, "Come on, Jenna." Even after I told her I'd arrived home early on Monday and overheard her conversation, she denied it. It was frustrating, but I maintained my composure. I told her that we were both aware she was lying and that what she said was unforgivable. I couldn't understand why she would say such things to Dylan, especially since she was lying solely to make fun of me. She kept rejecting it, behaving as if I were insane. She stated she loved me, was not unsatisfied with our sexual relationship, and would never complain about me. If I hadn't witnessed the exchange, I would have believed her. She deserves an Oscar for her portrayal. Some people inquired if I was certain she was talking about me. When she compared me to her ex and his cracking member, she did say my name, so there's no question. In the end, I told her I'd take us home so she could get the necessities and her dog. My brother and his girlfriend were also present. I wanted to make sure there were other people around to serve as witnesses. So I let her grab her belongings while refraining from being abusive or disruptive. I told her I'd pack up the rest of her items and set them out for her to get any time she wanted. She couldn't believe I was breaking up with her. She pleaded with me, but I was set in my ways and refused to change. It was difficult not to cry in front of her when she continued stating how much she wanted to be with me forever and that she hoped to be the mother of my children someday. I own my house, and since Jenna hasn't assisted with bills like rent or utilities, I wasn't too concerned about, to put it frankly, forcing her out. She continued asking me what she was supposed to do and where she should remain. I told her it was no longer my problem and that she could stay with friends until she could obtain her own apartment. The majority of the furnishings and decor were mine anyway. She only had clothes and toiletries to take with her. Even the refurbishing she had done in my house was on my dime. Then came the waterworks. She burst into tears, claiming she didn't understand how I could treat her like that and that she thought I was a decent guy. She must have said this a million times. I assured her I am a good guy, which is why I didn't just put her belongings on the front lawn, change the locks, and leave without explanation. Then, to my surprise, she dug the knife in deeper. She said she had no idea why she had said those things to Dylan, but eventually admitted she had. She went on to say that maybe it's because Dylan brings out the best in her, and she can laugh at things that would ordinarily make her cry, like my penis, apparently. I told her it was unfortunate that if what I had heard was her best, I would hate to witness her worst. It was spiteful of me, and I generally avoid making sarcastic remarks, but I told her she could return to her hometown and live with Dylan or her ex-boyfriend who had the 9-inch dick. It was astonishing how quickly the tears dried up. She flicked the switch and told me I had no idea how to treat women, that I was a loser with a little penis, and that I'd be alone forever. She stated she never truly loved me and that I was more of a friend, but she didn't want to upset me, so she stayed with me. She also indicated she would have declined if I had proposed. Just for good measure, she underlined that my penis was a baby carrot, and that I would die alone. I told her that I would rather die alone than marry someone who was harsh, did not love me and did not respect me. No joke, she started screaming. Not words, just a loud, terrifying scream. It was disturbing, and she stormed away after calling me a dirty pig. After settling the bill and apologizing to the waiter for the incident, I exited, and there she was, standing outside, crying. I knew what she did was terrible, and everything she said minutes before was equally as bad, but I still didn't like seeing her like that. I did not want to leave her on the sidewalk. I live in New England, and it is already quite chilly here. I offered to drive her back to the house so she could get more of her belongings and told her that she needed to find another place to stay once she packed a bag. She agreed, and we didn't chat at all in the car. It was one of the most embarrassing experiences of my life. My brother and his wife were already at the house when we arrived. His wife remained inside while Jenna packed, and my brother waited outside with me. It passed by uneventfully, and she was picked up by her girlfriend. I made sure I had my house key back before she departed. Later that night, Jenna texted me frequently. The messages varied from sorry to sorrowful, angry, extremely angry and back again. I did not respond to any of them. I merely texted her the next morning to let her know that her remaining stuff were on the porch and that she could pick them up while I was at work. I didn't hear from her until almost the end of the afternoon. She sent me a nasty text, wishing me every ill. I ignored it. When I arrived home, it was a disaster zone. She'd smashed everything. I'm not sure if she made a spare key or knew how to pick the locks, but she managed to get into the house. She ruined everything. Smashing precious items, ripping up furniture, clogging 2 sinks, and leaving the water running. She left the refrigerator door open and dumped food all over the kitchen. It was a wreck. The only considerate thing she did was lock my 2 dogs in a bedroom so they wouldn't be wounded by the broken glass or eat the scattered food. I own 2 vehicles, one for regular use and an SUV for work, which I use to carry large or unusual animals to the clinic. In the midst of all the turmoil, I had neglected to give her a key to the SUV for emergencies. I stepped outside to check, and she had also wrecked the inside. She poured flour and tomato soup throughout the interior. It's just things, I suppose, but the fact that she could do something so childish and horrible on top of everything else astounds me. Last weekend, we went to a play, hung out with friends, played Monopoly, invented a drinking game, watched Netflix, and made love several times. My house and automobile, as well as I, have been wrecked. It's amazing how quickly things change. Not my best moment, but I was so irritated that I immediately bought 25 pounds of baby carrots from Costco's rapid delivery service. I had them transported to her friend's house, addressed to Jenna, 100 pounds of baby carrots. They deliver within an hour. She sent me a flurry of fascinating and offensive texts that evening. Yes, it was petty, but my only regret is that I wasted food. I hope she donates them or prepares some of them. So that's it. I blocked her last night because the nasty texts kept pouring. I'm feeling really beaten down right now, and I've sobbed more than I have in a while. It is apparent that I made the proper decision. Jenna is obviously not emotionally stable or mature. She truly is harsh, and I know I deserve better. Since Monday, I've spent a lot of time reflecting on myself as a partner and trying to figure out what caused her resentment, or whatever it was. I'll be really honest here. I work a lot. I try to make time for the people I care about and avoid bringing work home when I've had a difficult day, although I do occasionally. I understand this. Jenna and I have had previous disagreements about it, and I've made a concerted effort to schedule my days so that I can return home on time. I've also attempted to avoid terrible days at work as much as possible. However, anyone who is a vet or has worked with one understands that we are always on call for emergencies. Sometimes we have patients we need to check on or stay with all night. Time off might be difficult. It is achievable, but it is difficult. My staff is fantastic and can manage most issues, but I still receive a lot of calls or texts from them when I'm on vacation or away for the day. I'm sure there were occasions when Jenna felt second best to my job. Well, I know there have been. She's told me so before. I attempted to make modifications, but there was only so much I could do. As far as I can recall, I've never been intentionally cruel to Jenna. I've had terrible days, Been cranky or absent, and we've had our fair share of arguments and fights, but nothing harmful or excessive. I genuinely thought we had a good relationship and were both pleased. I know I was. It's difficult not to question myself and wonder if I'm truly a disappointment, or if I neglected her to the degree that she felt unloved enough to act the way she did. I do not know. But I know that, nevertheless, the way she treated me and responded to the breakup was completely unacceptable. I didn't deserve it, and that's on her. So thank you for supporting me, Reddit. It's been wonderful to read all of the supportive comments and suggestions. It's time for me and my baby Carrot to find a woman who values us for who we are. TLDR, I broke up with Jenna on Thursday night. It didn't go well. She turned vicious and destroyed my house, car and me, but I did it and it's finished. I've blocked her on my phone and social media. In a fit of anger, I also sent her 100 pounds of baby carrots. Edit. I did file a police report and take pictures, which might help me reclaim part of the money lost through insurance. The police report is unlikely to yield any results because I cannot confirm it was her. The same goes for attempting to sue her in small claims court. Frankly, I'd prefer not deal with her anymore. I'm going to hope that insurance covers the damages and then move on with my life. Nightmare neighbor scheme to steal our home ends in $200K karma. You won't believe what happened next. Before we begin, let's introduce the key characters. The entitled neighbor will be referred to as N in the future, and the entitled neighbor's spoiled kid will be referred to as S, for entitled son. The former owner of our house, known as P.O., will also appear in this story, albeit in a minor role. Also, keep in mind that it's been over 15 years since we acquired the house. So unless otherwise specified, you can infer that most events occurred over a somewhat long period of time. Let's get started. In order to appropriately build up to the climax and establish the stage for the events that occurred, I must first provide some history. Most of this occurred before we purchased and moved into this home. Ann owned a huge plot of land down the road from a popular recreational lake in our community. I say down the road, but it's quite a distance away. Even though Ann lives on the only road that connects many lakefront estates and resorts, as well as the most popular boat dock on this side of the lake, the properties here aren't so expensive that ordinary people can't buy them. However, there are some incredibly valuable properties down the road, and very wealthy people pass by all the time. This will become relevant later in the plot. Karen, who was fairly affluent and had a considerable amount of property, decided to divide it into 4 nearly equal pieces when her children reached adulthood. One she handed to her daughter, who is surprisingly respectable given the rest of her family. Then she passed another part to S. She built residences for them on both properties, essentially following her children's requirements. Then on the 4th piece of property, which did not include her own house, she built a little convenience store. This will also be useful later on. I'm not sure why, perhaps to avoid future disagreements, but she ended up giving her children the deeds to their various houses and properties. You probably know where this is headed. While the respectable daughter was pretty respectable, S, or should I say irresponsible son, was a party animal. Everyone in the area at the time despised him. He would host loud, rude late-night parties practically every night, keeping everyone awake. Because he was called on so frequently, the police must have had someone stationed nearby. It undoubtedly did not help his entitlement that Mommy paid all of his bills for him. She maintained everything in her name, including water, electricity and rubbish. They all went to her mailbox, well, except one. Because the property was in his name, so were the property taxes, which he never paid to Ann and instead ignored. I suppose Ann either didn't think about it or expected he would pay for it himself. In any case, it was not surprising when the police arrived at his residence, but it was when he did not return and the house was auctioned off. At this stage, the house was in disarray. There were holes in the drywall, and the living room floor had a large hole that led down into the garage basement. The kitchen floor and subfloor had to be completely redone, and nearly all of the walls were covered in muck. His recklessness and partying habits essentially rendered the residence unlivable, according to the banks. As a result, the only people who could afford it were those willing to pay for it themselves. Enter Pomprupo was a house flipper. Not one of those large affluent ones you see on TV, but rather a hobbyist. He retired and flipped properties to stay engaged and active. Poe would acquire a house like this at an auction for a low price, fix it up, and then resell it. While he worked on it, he would live off the proceeds from the prior property. Typically, by the time he completed mending one and purchasing the next, his profit had almost run out. Any remaining monies would go into an emergency savings fund, which he described as nothing exceptional. Anyway, we were looking for a new apartment, but we couldn't afford anything too pricey. We spotted this place for sale on a website and thought it was great. It was the perfect size, in the ideal area, and even down the road from the lake, where we enjoy fishing and boating. So, everything appeared to be ideal in practically every regard. We were a little concerned about the pricing, which had not yet been mentioned on the internet, but it wouldn't hurt to look into it. We drove by to look at it and discovered Poe working on it. We came in to say hello and inquired about the price. He indicated that he intended to fix it up and sell it, and that his realtor had recently placed it to the website's database to make the process quicker and more efficient when he was ready to sell. Anyway, we sat down and had a lovely conversation with him. Just being cordial, and he enjoyed the company. We stated that we would be happy to buy it from him for a reasonable price, given its current state and the effort he had previously put into it. He had it approximately halfway built. We mentioned that we wanted to finish it and make it our lifelong home. He declined, claiming that he had previously received several offers for it and did not feel comfortable selling it to us before it was finished. He suggested we could buy it at full price when he was finished. So we politely thanked him and left our phone number, asking him to call us if he changed his mind, which he assured he would. Less than 2 weeks later, we received an unexpected call from him. He claimed that his sister had fallen ill in another state and that he wanted to go see her. He would not have the time or patience to complete the house. He said that the house was not up to code, but if we could find a means to acquire it, he would gladly sell it to us for a fair price. We eagerly agreed and began searching for banks. We had a few connections through a realtor acquaintance, who actually helped us find a bank prepared to lend us the money to buy the house, subject to a few restrictions. Essentially, we would have 2 weeks to get the house up to code. Otherwise, they may default on the loan and auction it off. After describing the problem to Poe, he pledged to help as much as possible. He couldn't do any work on the house because he was in such a hurry, but he did explain exactly what we needed to do to get it up to code and fulfill the very minimal criteria. He told us how much time, effort, and money it would require. He even promised to aid us in another way. We took out a loan for twice the amount he asked for the house, and he returned the other half. We utilized that money to restore the house. After all of his hard work, the house was so close to being code compliant that we could have done it ourselves. But, just in case, we called in several pals and finished it in half the time. After getting everything up to code, there was still a lot of work to be done. So we spent several months rebuilding flooring and subflooring, rewiring cables, mending cracks in the walls, and replacing old, unsightly, actually rotting wallpaper that was affixed directly to the wall. You get the idea. We put a lot of work into the place. It was then at last time to enter our ideal house. Although it still had certain problems that we would address later on, it was at last time to move in. Not even done moving in when Anne visited to introduce herself. Over and over, Poe had cautioned us about Anne and her entitled attitude as we were working things out in the extremely little time we had. Anne was first rather friendly, and we had no idea why Poe cautioned us about her so often. Then it transpired. She gently and compassionately told us that our house really belonged to her and that we had 30 days to go as we were finishing our call. She claimed she felt awful for us since we were duped so severely, but Poe had no right to sell her house to us at all. You might picture our fear when she told us all of this, as we had heard terrible tales about individuals being duped like that previously. That we had invested all of this time, money, and effort into this appalled us. Dream mansion, and now we were about to lose it just like that as we fell for some guy's fraud. We stated we will speak with Poe and the bank to have it all worked out and thanked her for clarifying things for us and for her friendliness. We thus followed that. The bank confirmed Poe was the real deed owner when we spoke with them. We spoke with the realtor, who likewise attested to the same thing. Poe told us they had harassed him continuously over the house and that they had accused him of stealing the house following his purchase at auction. Every person we spoke with related exactly the same story. We even went up to the courthouse to verify our name was on the deed. We learned the Anne tale from various neighbors during this procedure. Not long after this, Anne asked us when she could expect us to be moved out. We said that legally we owned the property, thus it would never be possible. Anne lost the property. We had no bearing on this. We said we knew it was most likely quite difficult to lose her family property like that due to her son's carelessness, but that was not our fault. We were merely giving her a property we had purchased with our own hard-earned money and had worked so hard to restore. Anne then started a protracted sob narrative about how this property had been in her family for generations, how she couldn't bear to lose it, and how Poe had pilfered it from her while she was caught up in the confusion of her child being detained. She realized we understood this. Given that we purchased the house from Poe for roughly $50,000 and considering that he was still making a meager profit on that even after all of the labor and materials he had invested in it before selling it to us, we inquired why they did not bid for the house and buy it back after he lost it. They could have had it back and easily paid next to nothing at auction. Anne said they refused to pay for something properly theirs and thought the house and belongings were being taken from them. We once more apologized, but we stressed that with all the time, money, and extra supplies we had spent simply to make her happy, there was no way we could afford to lose the property. We were sympathetic to her circumstances though, and we offered her the property for a very fair price, $100K, which, given its location and state of repair, is still more than half of its overall market value. We believed it was a fairly reasonable price after purchasing it from Poe for $50K and adding another $30,000 for materials plus several months of hard labor to repair it. Though we said nothing, if she wanted to negotiate with us, we would even be ready to drop to $90,000. She instantly counteroffered with $40K, stating she shouldn't have to pay anything at all for something rightly hers. She stated that she knew how much work we put into it and that we had to buy a lot of supplies to restore it, so she would be gracious and throw in an extra $10,000 for all the house we worked on. That was way too low. She became enraged when we informed her that $50K was what we paid Poe for the house. She labeled us liars and thieves, claiming the house was a total mess and that it was hardly worth that much. Not only had she turned to name-calling at this time, but she also called our dream house a dump after all the effort, sweat, and tears, not to mention money, that we spent into it. We were done with her lies, so kindly requested her to leave our house, stating that she was no longer welcome here and that we would never sell our house to her, even if she gave double the market value. Clearly agitated by this, she hurled all kinds of slurs at us as we were leaving the door. Later on, we discovered that she was disseminating all kinds of falsehoods about us around the neighborhood, claiming that we had taken her house and among other dumb behavior. We first dismissed it since we assumed nobody would really believe it. Then a man drew into our driveway carrying a gun, threatening to force us out. Though we had never personally met him, we had heard of him. Presumably viewing himself as the neighborhood's peacekeeper, he challenged anyone who generated such disturbances. Saying he was a decent, reasonable man, most of the residents in our area really liked him. Being a relatively rural area with lots of not-so-law-abiding residents, most locals valued his presence. Actually, he did far more than the police do most of the time and worked hard to maintain the peace in the area. Just a note, there are two main divisions to our neighborhood. Mostly senior people occupy one portion. It's quite pleasant and quiet, and everyone gets along there. The other is bursting with the less law-abiding folks farther into the bush and away from curious cameras. Separated by roughly a mile or so of farmland and woodland, we dwell on the brink of the quiet section. We then decided to try out that theory after learning about him before and presuming from descriptions that this was the same man. We welcomed him in for a beverage and conversation since we didn't know what was going on. We let him bring his gun, but we advised him that we would be carrying our own as well. If that means anything, almost everyone in my town owns a gun. There are more gun stores than dollar stores, hence we were not really concerned about his carrying a pistol. In our town, that isn't really meaningful. Simply said, hey, I'm capable of defending myself if this gets out of hand. Now, if someone pointed it at you, which he didn't, that would tell another tale. Returning to the main narrative, he said he thought it was something like that and apologized for the misinterpretation following a few hours of talking and situational explanation. Promising not to happen again, he said he turned off a switch after becoming enthralled in the reports. He also praised us for purchasing the house, saying that everyone was considerably happier when Anne moved out. He didn't have to hear people grumbling about loud music and intoxicated high kids staggered along the middle of the road in the middle of the night almost getting run over. Afterward, we all laughed good-hearted about it. He departed without saying another thing. Time now for the reason Mr. Peacekeeper felt the rumor so readily might be used. Though it's a bit of a side narrative, this is also a significant turning point since Anne's things started to fall downhill. Let us now get on to it. The events of this side story do cross a small bit with those of the next section of the plot. I then indicated Anne divided up a part of her land to open a convenience store. Well, this shop was quite well liked in the area, and being exactly in the middle, it was in a prime location. Their prices were unpopular. They really overpriced everything by quite a little, and their customer service was likewise essentially restricted to a thank you for your purchase as you left the door. That was good, I suppose, as occasionally they would offer a refund should you discover mold on the food you purchased from them. Still, they were rather well liked as they were the only convenience shop in miles. For most folks, they were simply a skip and a hop away if you had to buy groceries and did not have to drive all the way to town. Heck, we even put aside our differences and visited there quite a bit. After all, they were virtually next door. Apart from that though, their modest store's popularity helped them to establish a quite good reputation in our neighborhood. Everybody wanted to keep their handy small store, Thus they would dare anyone to attempt and remove it from them. I guess I could sort of see the emotion there. And that's back when everyone felt Anne and her family were decent folks. People therefore listened when Anne started disseminating rumors. Everyone knew that was ludicrous, hence the stories of us pilfering a whole house from her merely flew over. Still, they mostly believe she is trustworthy. People did believe the other stories though, and trust me, there were plenty. But most of them were little, insignificant items of concern for none. Let me explain that even supposing all the allegations about us were accurate, there was far more that could be said about some other people in our neighborhood, hence nobody ever gave them any thought. Anne clearly disagreed with us, hence nobody wanted to be on her negative side in case she banned us from her store. They did avoid us. They all simply turned away from us and let us run wild. Anne let her son return in after a few years when he was at last released from jail and had nowhere else to live. She rented him an apartment above her convenience store since she disliked having him live with her and totally banned any wild parties on her land ever again. Though, all he had to do was operate the business for them when they were busy with other things, which wasn't not quite often, he did not really have to pay rent. Still, Anne's son did not pick up his lesson even with all of this. He would clearly pocket the extra money and routinely double-charge products while running the register. We went back in for a refund after repeated discoveries of this. They usually use the broken register as their justification. After observing a trend, we told Anne that her son most likely pocketed the money and was double billing people for products. Anne was fairly entitled, but she did not go so far as to engage in clearly unlawful activity. We loved her small business and wanted nothing to happen to it. She told us, instead of appreciating us for bringing this to her notice, that we were seeing things and gently advised us to screw off. We very respectfully followed her demand. We also forwarded the material to some of our neighborhood buddies. Thanks to Anne, it had taken years to really reach the point where some of them would even glance at us, let alone converse with us. At last though, we had befriended one another. Every year, Christmas goodies for your neighbors help to cheer someone's day. In any case, they thanked us even though they informed us they didn't really believe it. Still, the news soon permeated the area. Then very fast, arrived Mr. Peacekeeper. He stopped in our driveway once more, but this time he was far friendlier. Knowing most of the stories about us were false, he generally disregarded them. Since then, we have really spoken with him several times, mostly on more pleasant terms, not on any major issues. Every now and then he popped by for a beer and just spoke about events in the area, inquiring of us on a few items. He did this with everyone, talking to most people at least once a year to keep current and ensure everything stayed peaceful and orderly. He made up his mind to do their job better so they wouldn't have to, since he disliked the notion of police lingering about. Everyone, including ourselves, thought this was a great configuration. It meant you could let your children unaccompanied stroll down to the lake from the worst areas of the neighborhood. Having said that, he really did not enjoy the tales we were distributing about our neighbors, especially regarding their small business. He said he had already spoken with them and they felt a misinterpretation resulting from register problems. He advised us to halt those rumors straight away and there if we wanted no problems. Although we knew he most likely wouldn't accept it even if we could show him evidence, we still wanted to show him. Since Anne waved it off as a register error, there was most likely nothing we could do to persuade him. He truly loved Anne and would usually take her word over ours. We thus agreed and apologized for any problems, stating that we really felt insulted and really wanted to defend the few friends we had acquired in the area. He went without saying much after accepting an apology and issuing one last warning. We thus just listened and decided to cease shopping there until absolutely necessary. But 2 more years changed everything. Though Mr. Peacekeeper personally went around and told every single person that they were untrue, rumors started by us because of our property dispute with Anne, people actually started paying more attention to their receipts after shopping there and started noticing the same patterns that we had. After we had pointed it out and the rumors got around the neighborhood, Anne most certainly knew about it, but she opted to do nothing and rather try to silence people with stories. Anne's son most likely pocketed enormous sums of money during this period. Small country stores like that, nevertheless, are entirely dependent on their customers, who reside in the area they are set up in. While individuals are vacationing and having fun in the sunny months, they generate a significant profit but not enough to last through the winter. And then that occurred. At last Mr. Peacekeeper linked the dots, and he was furious. Anne was right there with him as we could hear him all the way next door berating Anne's son to his face. Although you cannot even fathom how fulfilling that was merely the start. Not only did he go off on them, but he also went door to door that same day letting every single individual in the area know precisely what they were doing, even carrying a stack of receipts with him to show anyone who needed proof. Now, Mr. Peacekeeper was the one in the community who was trusted more than Anne. Literally in a 24-hour period, he had wrecked their company entirely. Every resident in the area ceased visiting. Vacationers and winter birds who knew nothing helped them still do somewhat well over the summer, but when winter struck and those crowds disappeared, they began to bleed money. 2 winters later, they were obliged to close their store for the winter months. That meant, though, they had to buy it all fresh every spring and discard more than 90% of their inventory every fall. After 3 more years, they finally closed permanently, as I suppose their expenses were not very low. That was the time their reputation in the community began to collapse, and owing to that, people started genuinely valuing us more. At last, we were able to establish some friendships without having to exert much additional effort. People stopped neglecting us and treating us as though we were afflicted. Still, Anne's slide from there was only the beginning. I regretfully must include a bit more history to reach the conclusion of the narrative. Though this shouldn't take too long, or at least I don't believe so, sorry that this is beginning to resemble a short book. Anne seems to be quiet, and I mean quite noisy. Not even walking outside without her following our every move through her window, or heading outside to walk her dog, pick up her grass, pull weeds, or whatever excuse she can come up with at the time. She is probably outside as well, if we are strolling about our property. We clearly aren't on the best terms with her and don't particularly want someone staring at everything we do, but we have nothing to hide. We truly don't want to be watched when we're attempting to unwind in our swimming suits. We have plans to set up a little pool and hot tub outside back. We therefore started researching a privacy fence. Wanting to be good neighbors, we gently told Anne we would be building a fence, to which she vehemently objected. We told her we intended to erect a privacy fence. We still had to live with her though, so we volunteered to talk with her about the specifics of the fence, the color, form, etc. Given that glancing toward our property seemed to be her preferred pastime, we wanted to make sure she wouldn't have to spend all day, every day staring at something she felt to be an eyesore. After all the nonsense she's put us through, we really still make extra effort to be the greatest neighbors we can. But returning now to the narrative. We intended to install the fence a foot over on our land across the whole property boundary, only to avoid any conflicts, since we wanted to be sure there were no disagreements regarding its placement. This was, by the way, before she left prison. We paid for a copy of the deed and with a map of our property lines at the courthouse. To be honest, we were startled to learn she claimed around 1/3 of our land. She even had a garden on it, and a small hut. You see, our property runs over a line of trees. It is more of a half-hexagon or trapezoid-like form than a straight box property as you find in several states. Where I reside, weird property lines are really typical. Anyways, the deed and property map indicates that a little triangle segment forms out of a line of trees cutting across some of our property. The trees, though, give it the impression of a square. She was asserting her ownership on the other side of the trees. She entirely flipped out once we brought this up to her, calling us liars and thieves and all kinds of other things. Having lived here for years believing it to be rightfully hers, we paid relatively little attention to the land. We so offered to sell it to her or perhaps trade it for a piece of her property so that everyone would have things simpler. She owned some land that connected to ours that was somewhat difficult to maintain. Expanding it a small distance would greatly simplify matters. Not to mention, it would allow us more space to pursue our interests. Saying that she would never pay for anything that already belonged to her and that she wouldn't even consider giving us her property for nothing, especially following our stole of this property from her, she categorically rejected. We have been in a major continuous property conflict since then. Now, something about where I live. As I indicated before, it's a pretty rural location with many unusual property lines, and property lines are rather often not straightforward. Many of the documents are hundreds of years old, and instead of X feet in Y direction, they employ transient markers like large oak tree to large rock next to stream. Many of these sites could be describing several things or might have vanished over a century ago. Therefore, it would be quite understated to claim that there are many property conflicts in our neighborhood. That, together with the fact that in some cases a very little fraction of property might be worth a lot of money, has caused our state to draft a lot of quite rigorous laws and rules controlling property conflicts, surveyors, etc. As a side note, a few years ago a landowner prevailed in a property battle against a very huge firm over just 0.1 acres of land. That paid the man over $1 million and harmed the company. Returning to the subject, given she developed our property lines rather lately, they were rather straightforward. That does not change the fact, though, that property rules are rather rigorous, especially with relation to surveyors. Like in the previous example, a surveyor might be readily bought by a big company facing the loss of millions of dollars for a small piece of land, therefore unfair to the appropriate proprietor. How then should one balance for that? Well, you create it such that the person who bought or coerced the surveyor has everything to lose by lying as well as the surveyor. According to our state statutes, a surveyor, even with honest error, who provides a poor survey by even a few feet would not only be fined heavily but also lose their license and never be let to survey once more in the state. In addition, they have to tell and reimburse every one of their customers for up to 10 years prior to the incident. The clients can then choose to pay for a further survey by a non-affiliated surveyor at the expense of the original surveyor. That is every client, up to 10 years before the occurrence and currently as well. Should they not be discovered to be accepting a bribe or blackmail, the former clients can also sue them for any damages resulting from any changes to the property line brought about by their erroneous survey and charge suitable rent for any property the surveyor may have omitted during that period. Should a surveyor be discovered to be receiving a bribe or blackmail, all damages and extra charges go toward the one who paid the bribe or extortion. This, together with the time and money lost from visiting courts and the general inconvenience caused to them, makes surveyors in my region especially likely to aggressively avoid anything even resembling a property dispute. Therefore, when a conflict arose, you might picture it not as simple as phoning a surveyor down here. It was also an unanticipated outlay of money. She found someone before we could locate someone, and I suppose she bought them or something since they presented the property line precisely as she had described, except from one small detail she objected to. She probably omitted mentioning that to them. Our land allegedly runs roughly 1 foot from her house. Oh, that was interesting to fool about with, but that was nowhere like the property she is actually trying to pilfer from us right now. She always seems to be indifferent introducing herself to a surveyor, whenever we are able to locate one, and note that she previously had her piece of the land measured, therefore hinting subtly that there might be a property conflict involved. After outlining what it could mean for anyone who would be interested in surveying our land, this quickly scares off everyone. You are clearly aware of why. Oh, did I overlook mentioning that the landmarks from the bank surveyor conveniently vanished before we ever started living on it? Not at all, indeed they did, somehow. I question how that came about. I suppose we will never know. Either way, if we can even locate someone ready to employ a surveyor, which everyone we have thus far found has given us completely ludicrous rates for, it would most likely cost us as much as that piece of property is worth. Though we are now saving cash to try to recruit someone, they are essentially risking their whole life here. That gets us to the culmination of this narrative, some few months ago. Although I apologize for the lengthy background, let us now focus on the current scenario since we are totally engrossed in it. A few months ago, a quite severe storm knocked down a tree in the contested area. Since this tree was literally right next to the road, when it fell it damaged some of our other neighbor's property, that which resides across the street from us. Not only that, but it also totaled someone's brand new sports automobile as they were traveling down the road. Although no one was injured overall, the cleanup took several days, just enough time for us to get a bill in the mail for almost $200K, practically more than our house and property were worth once we cleaned it up. Negative compliance started to take hold. Thus, just a little extra background for everyone who might not know, most property or home insurance does not cover damages to other people's property. Usually on you, even if someone is on public property like a road, if your property damages theirs and you could have reasonably stopped it, such as chopping down a tree next to the road before it collapsed in a big storm, then you're 100% liable for the harm done. At least that's how it operates where I live. We contacted them when we received the bill in the mail from some unidentified rich person's insurance company for their destroyed sports car and very politely informed them that the fallen tree was not on our property. They claimed they would look into it and come back to us after posing a few questions. About a week later, we got another letter from the insurance company with a copy of the deed and property line printout with the tree in issue circled in red, obviously on our property. They would be bringing us before court, or they were expecting complete payment within 30 days after their first warning. Give or take, that was roughly 2 weeks from now. We phoned them one more time to once more clarify that it was not on our property. The agent first argued with us a little, explaining in much nicer terms than I would have used, that someone would have to be brain dead to believe that the tree in issue was not on our property and that it would be absolutely impossible for anyone to believe it was that far off on the printout. All we did was provide them the surveyor and hired's phone. They groaned, stating they will call the surveyor and look into the situation further, but underlined we had roughly 2 weeks to get the cash ready should what we were stating not be verified. Actually, we never heard from them once more. Recall the penalties I discussed for providing erroneous survey responses. The surveyor acknowledged receiving a bribe, but there was no way he paid him enough to offset all of his potential losses. At this time he would most likely have to leave the nation. So he was not going to be able to provide the insurance company anything different from what he gave us or Later on, we phoned the insurance company to inquire about the matter. Reading over the notes, the agent felt really content. Confidentiality concerns prevented them from telling us too much, but they could tell us that N clearly disagreed with the claim exactly as we did, stating the land did not belong to her, and that the surveyor validated the findings with them. There was no justification whatsoever for the insurance company to suspect the survey results were fake because we were not contesting them and the surveyor was hired by N herself. As long as we were not contesting the findings, N should have whole responsibility for all damage the falling tree causes. Still, they were limited to saying that. That satisfied us. It was roughly what we expected. The aftermath. Though they clearly were not thrilled about it, N had no major trouble paying the insurance company the money, as you can most likely understand given my background. Although we are unsure of their wealth or savings, it seems sufficient to cover it without having to sell any more of their territory. We have mainly kept quiet about the property conflict since then, but we are still thinking about saving money to pay a surveyor to reclaim our land. By now the focus is more on the matter's principle than on the real territory. Regarding N though, we can tell every time she looks at us now that she clearly is not happy with us. She seems to object to the fact that we let her possess our land for some unidentified reason. It's free land. How could you be dissatisfied with that? LOL. She could try to spread stories about us at this time, but it would most likely backfire since most of our neighborhood has befriended someone quite decent and nobody trusts N anymore. N is essentially caught between a rock and a hard place ever since they discovered S was practically stealing from everyone in the neighborhood beneath their noses and they knew about it and did nothing to stop it. We are merely observing the flames they set burn to the ground from behind here. Anticipated to see what comes next. Oh, this is just a little extra for everyone seeking a little more enjoyment. We opted to install an invisible dog fence for our dogs while we were considering a privacy fence. For those not familiar with what that is, bury a little electrical line under the ground and then fasten a unique collar around the dog's neck. Should they approach too closely, it will set off a beep the dogs truly dislike. Should they continue, the dogs will receive a somewhat modest shock. We had to be convinced initially as we do not believe in shock collars. One of us even held it and crossed the line. Though it was something you could feel, it did not truly hurt, just left you a little tingly. In any case, you should train the dogs to the beep before letting them run free. So ideally, they would never even experience shock in the first place. They would turn around after only hearing the buzzer. At the time, we could not afford a real privacy fence yet. We attempted to let our dogs wander about our yard and avoid being imprisoned in the house all day. We wanted to stop our dogs straying anywhere near N's land, hence we had it firmly within our own. It wasn't very long either. Though it was more than 5 feet past what she claimed to be the property line, N must have thought we were indicating where we planned to place our privacy fence or something and ran over it with her lawnmower. That day we all discovered that electrified cables do not work very nicely with electrical lawnmowers. Her mower was badly wrecked, every electrical component was destroyed. She merely wanted to be petty and run over our marks, so she had to buy a whole new mower. The best thing about it was she had no means of trying to attribute it to us since it was so far over the property boundary. She clearly tried to disseminate her rumors, but they seldom went very far. Blaming us for not even trying would have been rather foolish. She never even begged us to get her a new mower or anything. I suppose she knew our reaction if she did, laugh. Still, I hope you guys love the narrative. Another one concerns a different scenario. How my mother's malicious compliance cost her firm over $100 million and resulted in the total, permanent shutdown of her entire department. Late though, and I'm heading to bed. I will relate that tomorrow or something else. Be alert for it. Caught my cheating wife at a secret hotel. My wife was surprised when I gave her divorce papers in the hotel lobby. Hello everyone, I hope each of you is doing great. I am writing on my phone, hence apologies for any mistakes. This is a rather long and disorganized tale. I have nowhere to negotiate this problem as I have run out of my rope. Little background. My SO is 40 and I am 43. Married for 16 years, we have 2 children, a 9-year-old boy and a 14-year-old daughter. At first, our marriage was somewhat turbulent, but we worked through those difficult years and came out much different. We married young, hence maturity wasn't completely there yet. Nevertheless, we knew we loved each other and could overcome any challenge standing between our marriage. Whether this was wishful thinking still remains a question. Still, I have been in engineering for 7 years while my wife has worked for 3 years as a manager in a very large advertising agency. Our careers pay nicely and have given our family a quite nice way of life. We were a rather close family. As parents, we always made sure our children could create wonderful memories. We always found time for our children no matter how busy we became. To be honest, I think I'm a decent husband and dad. When it came to my wife, I occasionally messed up. But I did everything for this woman, and it really shook me to my very core to learn she was having a long-term affair. Which leads me to the revelation. My wife was acting far away. Actually, the last 2 years preceding this one were the toughest. She just seemed to enjoy nothing I did. Yes, I know now. She would constantly tell me how her boss would handle this or that and continually contrasting me with her employer. Not able to grasp her mind. She can, however, ask her supervisor. Make her feel unique and avoid starting the initiative to take her on dates. Her supervisor does that for his wife though. Why was my immaturity so extreme? I would want to know how she wanted me to liven up our marriage. Her usual response was, "Don't ask, you need to already know and do it." So since I knew nothing, I investigated and bought books, anything. The response has to come from someone else. Everything I tried was greeted with either half-hearted thanks or bitter disappointment. In the years I have known her, my wife was never like this, therefore I felt that my failure to make her happy was something I really had to address. Little did I know, the entire time the repairing was being done by someone else. We were really close to her employer and his wife. They have children as well. The children adored one another. We brought them to our family trips to the park, barbecues, arcade gaming days. We have gone to theirs and they have visited our place many times. Not surprising that we grew close. When I told her boss about our marriage issues, he offered wise counsel. He seemed to be a great man. Still back to the discovery though. The demands of my wife to better myself where the marriage was concerned had emotionally worn me out. Her attitude really surprised me since, up until now, I had felt our marriage was wonderful. She was thus busy chuckling and laughing one night while messaging someone. Curious, I was also next to her in bed. She fiercely pushed away from me the instant I leaned to get a look. She asked me right away what I was doing, furious. She withdrew to the restroom when I told her I wanted to find out what the joke was and she said it was none of my business. That is the day I realized, deep down, that there was an affair of sorts underway. Though I lacked evidence as well. The next day I asked her straightforwardly, making a mistake. She was enraged and claimed no guilt. I wanted the truth badly even if I lacked access to her phone. She balked when I asked for her phone. She handed me the phone hesitantly only later in the evening. She deleted almost every text message she sent to particular individuals. I could tell since some of the exchanges sounded contradictory and others seemed absolutely ludicrous. I returned the phone to her, and we didn't talk about it until a month later when I got a friend to check the phone and retrieve erased texts. My wife had received another phone earlier and seldom used the one she handed me. Some books were found, and it was via bits and pieces that I at last found evidence of an affair underway. And you already figured it out, with her supervisor. I waited since I knew she would find some way to wiggle out of it if I addressed her then and there. But I was a wreck too. My only thought was on how it would impact the children. The scenario was terrible. I started crying in front of my friend. 3 days later I ordered How to Help Your Spouse Heal from an Affair, still not ready to give up the marriage. If you are shaking your head, it is okay. I began reading, expecting that if I showed my wife, she would stop this crap. I wanted the marriage saved and my wife back off. She had told me they had an emergency at work and not to wait for her, so I had intended to chat to her on that Saturday to sort things out. Of course, I called the office on the day to verify the narrative she told me and got no response. Saturdays are not open. I tried her phone but there was no response. On Sunday, around 2 a.m, she returned home, showered right away and went to bed. When I questioned her about her late arrival, she sidestepped the inquiry by claiming she had already advised me not to wait for her. I was tired of this. I left her the book I purchased absent-minded. She did not care. I was hurting. She didn't care when she saw me in agony. To find out, I asked the wife of her boss whether she knew anything. I still don't regret doing it since I was so yearning for stability. Finding out startled her as much as it did me. She wanted to face her husband, but I advised her he would most likely lie and try to cover it like my wife did. We got together at her residence to go over what was happening, and I handed her the meager evidence we had. She needed further proof, hence we both set out to compile data on our respective sides and then compare them. Starting to spy more on my wife, she followed suit with her husband. She found clear evidence quite easily on her end. Her husband was so conceited that he omitted deleting the texts on his phone between him and my wife. The small notes I'd discovered earlier at last made sense, and we now knew 2 years had been the duration of the affair. I was enraged, just as the wife of the employer was. I wanted retribution on them as well as she did. Everywhere they slept, her house, my house, fancy hotels, business travels. Reading all that made one queasy. They even emailed each other pictures, but we decided to overlook them since we wanted not to damage ourselves with the pictures. Though not an affair ourselves, we sought retribution. We both resolved that they could have each other if they so desired. About the same time, we each gathered divorce paperwork. We were dead set on it. We acted our part. Our husbands were unaware of what we knew. Our ducks were back then in a row, once more. This time, working with the wife of the boss, we knew exactly where and how they would be received. We knew the motel they had reserved for their good weekend. I visited there together with the sheriff. While the sheriff arranged everything, I waited in the lobby. My wife was called to come down from her room. She dropped down wearing a bathrobe and, I worry, nothing else. She was terrified and asked me furiously what I was doing there. Though not too distant, it was rather a distance from our house. The sheriff wanted her name and details confirmed. She responded ambiguously in the affirmative and was served. Seeing the startled expression on her face was quite fulfilling, but I chose to leave knowing the job was done as I did not want to bring it under discussion. She held my arm, dragged me back and insisted on knowing what the meaning of this was not letting me. You had an affair, I told her, and I'm leaving you, simplified. She began shouting at me then grabbed my arm firmly. The sheriff had to intervene and order her to release me immediately. She told me she could explain, that I had the wrong notion, and that it was my fault. She started crying. I left fast to get home since I was getting enraged. When my wife told her boss, he fretted. According to what I was told, he hurried home only to find himself served. We gave them no time to straighten their heads. We blindsided them exactly as they did us. While hers might take some more time, my divorce will be finalized in a few months. On the divorces, both my wife and her supervisor have been battling us. Neither want to file for divorce. The reasons I have heard are that they never meant to leave their husbands, that it was only a purely sexual affair and nothing more, that people have worse indiscretions and still come out with a fantastic marriage, that they messed up and would like a chance to right things. What, I asked my wife, do you suppose the result of all this is? She said she is not that person anymore and said she was following the flow and behaved totally against nature. She is a moron, I told her. For not giving my wife another chance, others around me are labeling me horrible. Though they would want it if we stayed together, my children know what is going on, age appropriate, and they are backing me 100%. We still reside in the same house, hence my resolve is weakening along with the fact that my wife is reading the book I purchased and attending therapy. It's becoming more difficult to keep to my guns. She claims to be sorry and will perform all necessary actions. All I need to know is that she is sorry she got caught. She has labeled me as a sour, angry person unable to go past all the negativity. Later she apologizes for it, but I know that's how she feels. I still speak with the boss's wife, and my wife completely detests it. She believes the boss's wife is the reason I won't be giving us another chance or that I will be having a vengeance affair. Like she did with her boss, she has insisted on my starting no communication with the wife of the boss. She is nuts, I told her. We did nothing illegal, why should I now accept her points of view? See, I believe I've finished. I respect nothing about her. She is still not ready to give up and is actively interacting with me about her ideas and procedures concerning the affair. I find them as justifications, hence I ignore her. She asks me to accompany her for therapy. I was thinking, hell no, as I have seen in numerous instances where the therapist blames the victim. She wants me to read books about infidelity with her. Given that we are likely to divorce regardless, what good is this? She is close-minded. She would not be able to control me with sex, I informed her. She says she just wants to show me how much she loves me and it's not manipulation. Correcting her, I responded, love me now, you mean? People around me, including my mother, are annoyed with me as they believe that mistakes are inevitable and my wife understands from her errors that she really loves me. I assured others I would never be someone's backup plan. Treating her the way I do makes me terribly guilty. Though there is hate involved, I still love her. Am I treating her unduly cruelly? She is trying quite hard, but I have no interest. Should I go back over the divorce? People say I should slow down. I shall regret it. I am moving too quickly. Yes, that is accurate. I'm not sure what is actual from what is not. Edit. I appreciate all of you spending time to answer my predicament. After reading all of your comments, some of you address some really pertinent issues. I will talk with my wife right now. Though I will keep you informed, I believe divorce is the best path for my children and myself. Reading from here has been beneficial. Update for the narrative. Alright, I'm back once more. I'm trying a second time since I have been receiving emails requesting an update. Appreciate your concern, folks. I would want to clear certain things since I can see your curiosity. First of all, right now my wife and I find ourselves in a type of decent state. Not because we are reconciling. No, I am still divorcing her. Taken down by the automat, the previous update I uploaded thoroughly described our circumstances. The brief story is that my wife is still hankering after another opportunity and is acting accordingly to acquire it. I won't give it to her as her affair was far too long for me to recover. Should it have been a one-night stand, the narrative might have been different, but 2 years is simply a slap on the face. I love her still and am not a monster, hence I have attended a few therapy sessions with her. One session was really excellent and let me see that my wife really regrets it. She has been trying pretty darn hard, but she has not been flawless in how she managed the aftermath from her affair. Her anger at me for constantly contacting the boss's wife and her fear of a vengeance affair made the second session a catastrophe. We argued a lot later since I refused to do what she requested, which was no communication with the boss's wife, therefore it was the angriest I had ever gone through this whole situation. That was settled after I assured her there wouldn't be a vengeance affair. Though I know I owe her nothing, she is still my wife until our divorce, hence I still want to keep my word. I have been visiting a couple of more meetings with her merely to observe her improvement. This therapist is indeed an individual and marriage therapist. I'm not attending these meetings since, deep down I want to save our marriage. If only I could watch my wife's development personally and help if necessary. I'll gracefully step away following the divorce. Still leaving her husband is the wife of the boss. Her husband is still contesting her on the divorce. She is as strong as I am, and I will say we do have low days with each other. We are only cordial with each other. I still see no affair taking place. She is a strong, self-reliable woman who does not, expletive, anyone. Right now my children are good. They understand that we love them no less simply because we are divorcing. Although they encourage us not to divorce, they see why it's right for our age. My wife works somewhere instead of the advertising company now. She quit not too long after I visited her. She claims to have kept absolutely no contact with her previous supervisor. She applied that advice and sought assistance on saving the marriage on forums. After seeing my wife work her butt out to be a better person, I can see the appeal even though initially I didn't understand why people stayed with adulterers. She's not a monster. She's simply flawed and made terrible decisions from which she is learning improvement. She has extended to me everything under the sun to give another go. Not sure I have it in me either. I feel more at peace the closer a final divorce seems to be. She recently begged to have a chance following divorce, and we had a lengthy conversation about this. She has extended a postnup offer. Although I wasn't totally against it, it would be a somewhat long road for her to travel for me to even consider as an option. She seems really eager, but honestly I don't see how that would help any of us. Mostly driven by a momentary feeling of justice, I want this divorce. Without compromising myself to the level of an adultery, this is the only justice I can obtain. After I told more about my wife's affair, my mother and I made up. Today, she's rather angry with my wife after finding out the specifics. I'm not sure how I would negotiate one. Rant. Affair for revenge? Alright, I wanted not to write here until my divorce was finalized, but right now I'm just annoyed and really want to rant. Like many of you, my wife is terrified about a revenge affair. The straightforward explanation is that I still get in touch with and see the other woman I betrayed. Against the other betrayed partner, my wife feels somewhat insecure. Is that how it is spelled? Younger, a model, quite beautiful, and runs a profitable company as the other deceived partner. It makes my wife suspicious that I would yield to temptation and cheat on her in return. The nerve of her to deliver me the two wrongs don't make a right lecture still astounds me. She isn't wrong of course, and I never intend to follow through. Still, her hypocrisy bothers me. Like yesterday, every time I visit the other betrayed husband, my wife becomes somewhat depressed or very clingy. She has thrown herself at me several times to make sure I do not cheat on her back, but I'm not sure how many. Her advances are turned down, and that further aggravates things. The deceived have to struggle along and try to pick up the pieces while cheaters are thus selfish, just thinking about themselves and their suffering. Besides, our children still see their children. Although I never go to the other betrayed partner without my children, my wife still believes I have it in me to be as merciless as she was and sees every chance to attack the lady. Laughable. Expletive. OM is still residing in their vacation house and begs the other betrayed partner to bring him back. I am not going to lie. Seeing him suffer the repercussions makes me very happy. Given my degree of leverage on him, he has not tried threatening me. He has to cope with my ongoing communication with his wife. He makes sure I'm not around when he visits since he is allowed to see his kids whenever he wants but does not want to see me. To be honest, I pity the man. My wife has been really contrite lately. She has lavished me with love, which I just push aside. I'm not in a good frame of mind. Today is our therapy session. I feel like releasing all the suffering and hurt I have gone through thanks to her. My anger has become intolerable. Update. Well, here I am checking in. Not especially fresh to report to you folks. Only a few things have evolved though. Reviewing my conversations and postings helped me to see how wonderful this location is for helping people just like us. To help me to see my circumstances better, I have been reading a lot of material about infidelity. Still, during a recent therapy appointment with my wife, she asked that I give her a little more time to win me back. She had reason after reason why it would be a good idea for me to at least try and see if I could assist in restoring our marriage, not quite reconciliation yet. I kept bringing up the fact that her primary motivation was the fallout from her affair. She wouldn't be trying if she still saw OM. For months she emotionally mistreated me. I'm not the kind of person to be walked all over, even by the woman I loved. She owned all of her mistakes and once more apologized. She has promised me so much of making it up to me. She believes it is possible and wants our marriage to be stronger than it has ever been. Having plenty to spare, I asked her whether she would be ready to tolerate my wrath. She was like, absolutely. And she would like me to dump on her anytime I feel like it to help me process the grief. Usually, I got a million excuses when I questioned her why she had an affair. She was honest this time, telling me there was no justification for what she did and that she would spend every day for the rest of her life demonstrating to me by her actions that she was really regretful and would never hurt me that way again. She genuinely dumped emotions onto me, and it helped me to realize that she truly was rather insecure about herself and envious of the other betrayed partner. Her ego shot skyward from the affair. She loved feeling beautiful and wanted. She would never last and admitted the encounter was most certainly a fantasy. She considered the ramifications from time to time but scarcely gave them any thought overall. She regrets having the affair and claims she will live with this guilt the rest of her life. She most likely will never forgive herself. She informed me she could never hold a candle to the other betrayed spouse, and the reason she was so sure I would cheat again was because the other betrayed spouse is not only gorgeous but also a lady with integrity. Not once has the other betrayed partner ever threatened her or behaved meanly toward her. It was all my wife's fears, and maybe the fact I was furious with her for turning on me. It gets fascinating here. The therapist asked me what it would take for me to give my wife's offer some thought. Not one thought came to me. Since what I presently have is a fake of a marriage and I never signed up for it, I was honest and told her, a time machine. She informed me that every marriage deals with issues ranging from death to adultery. How those issues are handled reveals the resilience of a marriage. I told the therapist to concentrate on my wife instead of us as I really couldn't believe where this talk was leading. The therapist advised me that my incapacity to pay attention to logical arguments could be a communication-wise issue. I agreed not to disagree. During the journey home, my wife and I had a long conversation. She asked whether her affair had made me feel emasculated. Given she had never asked me that prior, the question really caught me off guard. Sure, I said. She startled me by wondering if sleeping with another woman would make me feel better. I reminded her once more that I am not, nor will I ever be, a vengeful lover. She clarified that she was referring to a trial separation whereby I would go get my mojo returned. She will stay true and wait till I'm good and ready to return to the marriage. Before, I felt she was desperate, but her idea seemed insane. I questioned her how that would help the marriage in any form so that both partners can be having affairs. She informed me it would not be an affair as we would be separated under conditions allowing my freedom to see other people. She answered that we were divorcing anyhow, so if this doesn't help us, at least I could see what the outside world has to offer. I told her that is a great risk on her behalf. She appeared completely out of character to suggest it, hence I clearly rejected the proposal. For the past few weeks, my wife has been remarkably quiet and patient. She is unlike the wild, insecure one I used to know. Naturally, I should not trust her for my personal benefit. It is quite challenging though. She has been really giving in the divorce, even if she doesn't want it. Though not my case, I have read so many stories of divorces turning acrimonious. Being in this state is rather surreal. It is challenging to negotiate. Edit. Let me also make clear, I am still completely going with the divorce. Hearing people's impressions of this interests me. Edit. Back once again. Hello to each of you. I have another update on this sorry condition of my life. I want to thank the people who keep contacting me in support before I get into that. My wife and I have thus decided to be courteous now and celebrate the holidays as a family. Though my wife is still hoping otherwise, this will be the final holiday ever observed. This was for the benefit of our children. I have loving children. Our divorce will be official midway through February. For those of you who are interested, we have shared everything half and half, although she has been quite giving on her side. She might become nasty later, but so far she has been good and tells me it's because I have been a terrific husband and parent. She feels I should get more than a fair divorce considering all she has done. Still don't know whether it's a technique. Though I do gain somewhat more thanks to her, that is not to imply she will lose a lot out of the divorce. I have chosen to cease attending sessions with her. It was confusing her and offering false hope. She has said that she has a strong desire to be close to me all the time and that her affair made me feel emasculated and unwanted. She has been attempting to have sex with me rather often, and I mean quite often. To be honest, my wife seldom started sex before all of this, so I felt a little offended that she was doing it now. I came to value her seeing this as a hang-up of mine and her desire to fix it over time. Though I have turned her down, she continues fiercely claiming that this has nothing to do with reconciliation and that she only wants me to feel good and desired. For now, I have shut off communication with the other betrayed partner since things were becoming somewhat too personal for my taste. I suppose you were not far off when the person mentioned I was having a vengeance affair. It wasn't even anything I knew till the other betrayed partner admitted she wanted to try and see where our relationship would develop. She said she would wait to start anything until my divorce was official. We have agreed to take a vacation from each other till everything is settled as I was somewhat perplexed and had no explanation for her. The second betrayed partner is a beautiful woman, but I'm not sure whether I could make her feelings back off. I have very little idea how to manage that. Someone suggested that her future reconciliation with her husband is being hampered by being near the other betrayed partner. I guarantee you that nothing I do relates to her choosing to leave OM. She is done with him and that is all. When we are together, we do not discuss our spouses negatively. OM personally visited me lately to atone for all that happened. He was usually an arrogant man, hence this event really helped him to grow humble. His apologies did not sit with me. Though I wouldn't say expletive about what he is going through, call me petty. Is it alright for me to have sex with my wife even if we are not getting along? I do admit I miss having sex. I sorely miss the closeness and intimacy of it all. New lingerie, sexting, touching, letters, etc. My wife is eager and has been trying everything possible to start it, and sometimes I find it difficult to resist. Honestly, I just didn't care to know exactly where they had sex, so she even threw away, destroyed, and replaced everything that had to do with OM at my house without my asking her to. Switching off these emotions is difficult for me. Is this a catch-up? Am I the one being played? I wanted her here as it's less of a hassle until the divorce is finalized. Before someone says kick her out of the house, I've already tried that. Rant. At last I understand it. Though she was nothing but worthless, I felt I squandered all these years on a woman. Nevertheless, she produced wonderful memories and children. As a man, these things I will never forget and value greatly. I am going to do better than her though, and at last I realize I am better than her. People have come flooding in offering me guidance on how to handle this. I realize at last that I am deserving of better than her. She twisted me over, put me down, and made me feel less than when another man paid her any attention. She actually gave another man her all. It still shocks me that I'm at last realizing I am over her. She only now does all it takes to maintain me. She is now focusing her effort on us. She used to not care, however now she wants me to be happy. She now desires to be this daring sex partner for me. Though it was never amazing, I enjoyed our sex. I can now clearly see what I have missed. Her writings with OM let me know only the surface of the graphic nature of their trysts. Now, despite her past relative slowness, she wants to show me just how much she loves me. The lethargic sex tells volumes to me. While earlier it was all about giving her attention and providing for her at the same time, now she gives me space and is pleased and supportive of all I do. She now respects my bounds and surpasses them to add more. She now views me as the king I wanted her to see, but no. First I had to smother her off her pedestal first. She is the perfect woman right now, yet it seems transitory to me. She now tells me everything exactly, very open. She is quite honest as well, even if it may make her embarrassed or offended. Before, I don't believe I have ever seen any woman looking constantly ashamed on her face. She wishes this affair never had a place. She kicks herself quite a bit every day. When I am simply not responsive to anything she does, I can see the desperation on her face. She tries to cover it, but she seems so unhappy. Though occasionally I detest myself, To me it's necessary. Why cannot I consider this as a good thing? Why cannot I criticize her now for her actions? They exhibit regret, right? Many have LTAs and come out even more powerful than before. Why am I making decisions based more on feeling than on a point of mature objectification? While I enter another dubious relationship, someone else will end up receiving the better and upgraded version of her. When everything seems to lead to something decent for the future, why not strive for this? These are the lines I have been handed. My response is that I will not tolerate disrespect. Perhaps I was eager in the early phases of research, but I woke up from that fast. This is to respond to those who have routinely asked about my position and messaged me. This Christmas I will be spending it with my whole family and then moving away from my wife. To retain my wife's grip over me and go totally from the concept of her, I resolved to cease listening to the garbage I produced in my thoughts. Neither will I be giving us another shot nor dating her. We are done for good. My wife is not a villain, and that is the truth. She should be happy too, but it will never be with me. She has personally shown me that. When I absolutely hit rock bottom, I phoned the other betrayed partner today and promised her supper after the holidays for her support. She mentioned she would really like it. Although I know this isn't common, we truly helped each other all through this and I owe her thanks. I really didn't know before people started discussing how much I intended this with OBS. For the past few years, my feelings have been so twisted that the whole idea of another lady never crossed my head. And dinner is it, nothing else unless both of us really want it. But the closer the divorce approaches, the more I see I really have choices. One such alternative has been right there. Regarding I have nothing to say about the man. Not a flying expletive. I will inform any woman as I do not believe I will marry once more. Though my divorce has not been particularly difficult, I am nonetheless losing a lot of money. Today, the whole concept of marriage seems to be a hoax. I apologize for just now being so cynical. Though I'm jaded, I want this essay not to insult anyone. I realized how little I got back after giving this lady my best years. Happy holidays, you won't be seeing me for some time. Update, formally divorced. It has been long since I expected. I did say earlier that I will be returning here for the final update. That ends. Formally, my ex and I have split ways permanently. It happened around 3 weeks ago. For the better part of several days following the event I mourned as though I had lost a loved one. That my marriage failed so spectacularly really affected me rather strongly. Ever since I initially found out about the affair, I never shed tears that strong. I also railed a lot, most likely one of my lowest points. Everything has been set up for my ex, partly on my behalf for the children. She left the house, I am attempting to buy her out of her portion of it. She currently resides in an apartment, a somewhat large downsize for her, and it basically makes her depressed. She still visits the therapist and remains committed to reading and researching infidelity. Not exactly sure why. With little physical touch, we have had long chats both before and following the divorce. She is the mother of my children, hence even if I know I shouldn't be entertaining her right now, we should be decent co-parents. Thanks in great part to this group and others, I am nothing except logical about the matter. Of course, it's the same song. She wants to reconcile, and I believe it would be too dangerous for me to put myself in the same circumstances once more. I regret not feeling the right mood to present her the gift. I went to supper with the other betrayed partner this past weekend solely for companionship and conversation. We covered a lot of ground. Things grew flirtatious between us, and I have to say I was somewhat hesitant to welcome the fast-shifting mood. I suppose I should say that the evening concluded with quite fervent intensity. I'm sorry for the TMI. Most likely, the most amazing sex I have ever experienced. OBS is quite much a giver, spades above my ex. Although I had no intention of it going that far, the other betrayed partner was eager and I too was. Learned quite a few more LOL tricks in the sack. First time I had someone that was eager to satisfy me rather than the other way around. She divorced her ex, thus I guess I shouldn't call her the other betrayed spouse anymore, but for privacy's sake I will just use that. To be honest, I do not see us advancing our relationship. That evening, I suppose the hormones and booze got the best of us. Though I'm not sure she would want to. I believe she also helps me to arrange myself emotionally. Still, I feel really terrific. Although this may not be what people want to hear, the sex I had with the other betrayed partner greatly helped with my remaining self-esteem problems. Desired, living, and at last I knew what I was missing. I will never accept artificial sex once more. Knowing that I did not lose my morals and was not cheating made me more fulfilled. All things considered, I'm really pleased with how I handled all this mess. Though not flawless, I did the best I could. Though I did lose a lot of money in this process, I am most likely coming out really lucky compared to many BHS. But it was because I was ready to listen to those with knowledge rather than mindlessly wishing for the best. I will thus be eternally appreciative of you people. You and everyone who listened to me helped me to avoid even further losing my value. Summary. Respect you. Never, never tolerate disrespect from anyone else, not even from individuals closest to you. Everybody is entitled to a happy, contented relationship. Never accept your partner's leftovers. Every committed partnership should feature a satisfying and healthy sexual life. Do not accept it if your partner is not giving you their all but did so in an affair or before with someone else. Just state your discontent. I am not encouraging rape or sexual abuse. If your spouse is not ready to meet your desires, do not settle for dull sex unless both of you agree. One can walk away from that without trouble. Share, interact, share. I cannot underline how very vital that is. Should you ever be betrayed, only you can really recover? I needed a long time to grasp this. Though that's all I can currently think of, there are many more. I'll be here to respond to your comments, but I'm done blogging here permanently and moving on with my life in around a few hours from now. Have a nice one, everyone. Right now, things are good. Update. Hey folks, people wanting to find out how my issue is going have been flooding me with emails. I still get triggered here and there, hence I have been deliberately avoiding everything involving adultery. Having this in mind, I am still working through the trauma. I try not to dwell too much on it, hence I've been absent from this site and others in order to move on. But given so many people are worried about me, I will reassure you and provide an update. I'm good, no mishaps, no poof, I'm off the face of the earth. I'm still in IC and my girlfriend is the other betrayed partner. With regard to child custody and money, she resolved her matter with OM. She should have handled that sensibly instead of being vindictive and dragging him to the cleaners. The children do have some conflict over all this, and we are working as well as we can to handle it. We have to start therapy for them to ensure they appropriately adjust and realize that their relationship with the other betrayed partner has minimal influence on them. Still, we do take them into account when it comes to the way this is handled. Not everyone is on board, hence this is really difficult. My ex and my daughter do not enjoy being around each other. I'm not joking here. There's conflict when those two are near one another. I really believe both of them blame the other for how things turned out. My ex still wants a second chance and is most likely offended that the other betrayed partner stands in the path of me seeing things clearly and not tossing away what we have eternally. This woman is so misled, her antics really concern me. She tried something at a friend's 4th of July celebration. I closed it, although I suppose it was not sufficiently strong. Though you guys were right, she wants to come crawling back in a bad way. I did not believe the individuals claiming she would be pining for me. The other betrayed partner is letting me handle that. But she's also becoming sick of my ex too. Did I mention my ex's passionate loathing of the other betrayed partner? Ever since I left her for someone else, my ex has been a train wreck. But I truly thought she was improving herself. I treated her better than I treated anyone else in my life, hence she treated me like garbage and I still don't get it. But the instant I respond F you, she is backflipping to grab my interest. I'm not sure whether I ought to be offended over this. There you have it. Now everyone can relax. Regarding my daughter, I get anxious. Hello everyone. I am new to this sub but not new to Reddit. Actually, I have been searching for suitable references to handle my current circumstances. Though I'll outline it below for you all, feel free to review my history to obtain a better backdrop. Ex-wife of mine had an affair. It ran for over 2 years. My ex-wife compared me to our OM a lot and was really nasty to me during this period. Our sex life was worse than it had been before, and at first I blamed all of my failings. I didn't have a straightforward strategy to leave her once I found the affair, but it gradually came to pass. One weekend she departed to hang out with OM and lied to me about it. I contacted the other betrayed partner and we worked together to divorce each of our respective wives. The affair was revealed to our age-appropriate children during this process under a mommy broke a promise to daddy kind of conversation. Not specifics, only that we were heading our different directions but yet loved them very much. Though of course they didn't want the divorce to occur, which is also quite reasonable, they took it as well as anyone would want. Although my ex-wife has been relentlessly advocating for reconciliation, I wasn't there to provide her another chance. Understanding it wasn't about me, I forgave her and wanted to be done with the relationship. The divorce grew more expensive the closer it approached completion, although the financial harm was not too severe. I also have to say that the other betrayed partner and I began a gradual relationship immediately following the divorce. It was first like FWB, But these days it's far more serious. Had it not been for our mutual support during the aftermath of the affair, I most certainly would still be with my cheating ex, that or murdered myself, half joking. Still, I constantly chat to my children to find out how they are handling this. I strive to make sure our talks are honest. If they object to my relationship with the other betrayed partner, they can let me know so. I wouldn't be insulted since I want to avoid putting them in a position that would cause problems down the road. 10-year-old son likes OBS. Given her age, 15, my daughter would rather have a little more time adjusting to the new dynamic. She says she doesn't want to meddle with my connection with the other betrayed partner and she wants to see me happy. I told her I wanted her to be happy too, even if it is not her place. She can say so, and I wouldn't mind, if she prefers the other betrayed partner. She claims she just needs some time and is good with the other betrayed partner. About good partnerships, we have had several conversations with them. My daughter and I have had a lot of conversations regarding her concerns and worries. She seems generally quite helpful to me thus far. The other betrayed partner, and my son, daughter and her 2 daughters are very subtle in our relationship so as not to overwhelm all the other engaged children. Everyone, even OM, is in therapy. But, that is a different matter entirely. This is clearly an unusual circumstance, as you can observe, which brings me back to my kid. The affair and choices taken have clearly affected her relationship with her mother. She tells me straightforwardly that she hates her as none of this would have happened without her. She is quite defiant with her mother. She pushes off her mother's attempts at affection, sulks when it is her turn to take her, and even curses at her once, which results in me stepping in and instructing her to be respectful, which she followed in that incident. The two had argued, and it worries me greatly that my daughter is suffering in such a severe degree. Though there is only so much she can do on her own, my ex-wife is attempting to cope as best as she can. Since I chose to divorce, she wants my help in restoring a relationship with her kid. She was the one who cheated. I could toss her right back off. I am above that, yet it calls into question how I handled this. Concerns I have. My daughter respects nothing about her mother. My daughter doesn't know her mother mistreated her. She wants things to be back as they were. Although my daughter is in treatment, I'm not sure how much it is benefiting her. She seems overburdened since she believes she has no voice or control over the circumstances. She has managed my relationship with the other betrayed partner really effectively, but I worry she is suppressing her feelings. Divorce of their mother seems like I might have damaged their lives. Though I'm not returning to that poisonous person either. I really value any advice. Update: I know you folks are worried about me. Hey everybody, sure, I saw your chat requests and emails. I'm sorry for not getting back. I'm not active here anymore, but I am very much aware that some have been attempting to follow up on my position and this update will help to allay your concerns. Not a happy ever after, be advised. First let's start with the large elephant in the room. How are the other deceived spouses and I doing? Actually, amazing. Years ago, I would have gone after a woman like her if I realized she existed earlier. LOL. All joking aside, other from her I have never had a closer bond with any lady. I had no idea what a good relationship looked like as my ex-wife put me through the grind so often. Though I still have self-doubts, the other betrayed partner is a great friend and has supported me through this. I really love this gal quite a bit. I feel the same way about her and she has repeatedly shown me, time and time again, that I mean a great deal to her. Nothing more than a girlfriend though. I have questions about the entire concept of marriage. We still conduct things behind closed doors and minimize involving the children in the full relationship process. Indeed though, the children are aware of our courting. Regarding the children, their start was really difficult. Who am I kidding? But right now they are getting along really nicely. I believe it largely relates to our close involvement in their life and ensuring they had someone to talk to when they encountered difficulties. Many therapies as well. Love the other betrayed spouse to bits, my daughter and son do. She interacts with children quite naturally. Her kids enjoy me much more than they did about 2 years ago. To really surprise me, her youngest began telling others that I'm her stepdad at events and gatherings I took her to. She said she loved me a lot and I made her mom happy, so she's happy I'm her stepdad. I was scared she felt forced to see me that way. You have no idea how emotional I became upon learning that. It felt like a ton of bricks from nowhere, but I did present a brave front. Though they presented a unified front to mercilessly taunt my son, the only boy and youngest of the bunch, I enjoy seeing my kids contentedly playing with OBS. Indeed, I'm not sure whether I should smile or grimace at that one. How about my unfaithful former partner? We get along rather well. She has been working very hard on her own to mend her relationship with her daughter. I was pleased when my daughter informed me she could find it in her heart to forgive her mother for what she did. Over these years, they have gone through a lot and have grown really nicely together. Still, I doubt my ex-wife has completely embraced our couple's way of life. She still seems to be seeking for or implying a second try. She still goes to individual therapy while working out at the gym. She seems far healthier overall now, but I don't really give a damn. I've reconciled with the past. Her issue stems from not following suit. Now, she talks more with the other betrayed partner. This is reciprocated, but the other betrayed partner routinely sees her with mistrust, as she should, given all that has happened. Is a cause gone lost. I had no idea what a disaster the man would be, all that money and no brains would create. Currently he has a girlfriend, but his children hate her and are rather honest about it. I needed some time to realize how self-absorbing the man was. To be honest, I also dislike his girlfriend. She strikes me as being quite cruel toward the girls, materialistic and selfish. In other words, we're performing better than just good. I had my questions about whether this was the correct route, but given the hard work of the people engaged, it is working out quite brilliantly. Not a happily ever after, just right now. Well, you have it right. Now everyone may relax easily. The golden child brother got my fiancée pregnant. After 5 years, he is in a coma, and my mom has asked me to step in as the father for his child. 5 years ago, only a month before I, now 30, was scheduled to get married to my fiancée, I discovered she had been seeing my brother. They came clean to me about it only because she wanted to keep the baby and was pregnant. Apparently ever after Karen and I were engaged, my ex-fiancée Karen, 30F, and brother Chris, 33M, had been sleeping together. Getting engaged was certainly the next step since Karen and I had been dating since our junior year of high school and had stayed together through college as well. Still, she chose to cheat on me with my brother once we became engaged. The only reason that ever happened was that a few days following our engagement, my brother told her he had always harbored her and felt he had to tell her since she was getting married. He was unable to tell her anything regarding these emotions thereafter. She then became aware all of a sudden that she had also been progressively developing emotions for him. She had stayed with me since she was hesitant about him, apparently even flirting behind my back occasionally at family events and other gatherings. 5 years ago, just a few months before my wedding, I got to know all these things when the two of them sat me down along with my parents and informed me they were intending on getting together. Karen was in love with Chris and they were expecting a baby together, so she could no longer wed me. That day, I was rather agitated, nearly refusing to accept it, and told Karen I wanted her to accompany me home and break this relationship, whatever it was, with Chris. But my mother made it really clear that Chris and Karen would be together and that nothing of the kind was going to happen. Since it was finally their choice, I simply had to find peace with it. That my mother was endorsing anything like this astounds me even now. At least my dad had the decency to appear ashamed and try to comfort me, but my mother openly backed this and even told me that if I objected, I could keep it to myself since Karen was pregnant and I had no right to disturb her in such a delicate state. My mother hardly cared about what I was going through as she was simply insane over at last having a grandchild in the family. She battled with me tooth and nail to defend the behavior under question. Following the incident that day, Karen moved in with my family as her own parents stopped wanting to talk to her once she told them the truth. Obviously, we had to call off the wedding. My parents paid for it so I wouldn't have to worry about that either. But I refused to talk to the family, hence I was kicked out. We have had absolutely zero touch over the last 5 years. My father is the only person who even cared to attempt and get in touch with me. Unfortunately, I was not interested in talking to him either, hence there has been radio silence from their end since I severed contact with them. Karen and I had been together for a very long period, hence it took me a very long time to recover what had occurred to me. I had really loved her, hence it took a lot of therapy to get over it. Even today, I wouldn't say I'm really over it, but I'm handling it. Still, the rest of the family kept in contact with me and I did learn from them that she had a son with my brother. There was no need to get in touch with her after that either, as a paternity test verified that it was my brother's child rather than mine just 1 month after she gave birth. They spent the past 5 years together and finally got married. My mother contacted me out of the blue about a week ago, which surprised me since she had been the one most in favor of Karen and Chris, like to an unhealthy degree. I had assumed everything was going well for them. Curious just a bit, I decided to contact her back when she emailed me stating she had to talk to me immediately. She cried and conveyed some quite awful news when I phoned her. I found out that my brother had suffered a quite catastrophic accident. It was a hit-and-run case, and sadly, the impact caused him to fall into a coma. The exact length of recovery is unknown, This had happened last week. Just 3 days after the physicians reported things were somewhat severe, my mother decided to give me a call to let me know about it. Initially, I assumed she would want me to see him and be there for the family. I would have been willing to comply since, in spite of all, I believe this is a major issue and it would have still been a fair expectation. I would not want to turn my back on someone in such a horrible state. Then my mother turned completely another way and declared she wanted me to be with Karen and my nephew. Then mother informed me she now expected me to be there for them in my brother's place. I had no idea what that meant either. She informed me that because Chris was essentially not even there anymore, I had to be there for Karen and her child in any manner whatsoever. When I asked her to explain, she expected me to jump in and live with them so I could look after them, not only financially. She claimed she would have taken them in herself, but she was not getting younger and caring for all of them would be too much effort. She was phoning me to let me know this, and she wanted me to decide on the call itself. I clearly lost my cool as she avoided me for 5 years and now wanted me to do something so significant when she was finally speaking to me. Although Karen and her son were all on their own right now and they needed someone to be there for them, I could see that someone from their close family would have been more suited for her than me. Someone she had betrayed and then not even tried to apologize to. Clearly, I told my mother right away that I was not going to do such a thing and that she was stupid for ever expecting me to say yes to that. Then she began fighting with me over the phone, and I had little time to spend. I immediately hung up and then blocked her once more as I was already somewhat annoyed and I wanted to not let her further sour my attitude. After that, I tried to go about my daily business but I couldn't stop thinking about what Chris and Karen were going through. I felt terrible for them. That was really strange. Thus I clearly was not going to follow what my mother had asked me to and substitute my brother for their family. He was still alive. He had just fallen asleep, but it was not as though he had died already. She was acting as though he had disappeared. I believed that my father would be more rational than my mother, so later that day I chose to phone him instead as I was feeling very lightheaded over this whole situation. After 5 years of no contact, it was somewhat strange to chat to him. Yet after some brief conversation, I asked Chris how he was doing. Right now, he told me, things were not looking very well. Then I expected him to have some decent understanding when I told him about the earlier that day talk I had with my mother. Rather, he also added, my mother was correct to have expectations of me. That truly surprised me since, out of both my parents, my dad was always the more cool-headed one. Now even he was saying such strange things. He said that Karen and I had a history nonetheless and that I am also part of the family regardless of our former 5-year relationship. He stated he truly meant that. In the end I am blood. If someone else could stand up for the family, it should be me and my mother's expectations are not particularly illogical. And right now I'm not sure what to do. I have been avoiding talking to anyone from my family, including my other relatives, for the past week since I am simply worried that someone would bring this up with me and subsequently I would be obliged to justify my choices. Since I'm not stepping up for my family and I know they truly need me, if not financially, then at least emotionally, I also sort of feel like the bad guy here. Simply said, I'm not sure what to do. Though I know my mother is asking of me something quite strange and illogical, I feel guilty for turning it down straight away. I just feel so strange about this whole thing. I haven't even been down to the hospital to see my brother. Since all of this is so intimate, neither have I been able to discuss this with any of my friends. Although they understand how things have been between my family and me ever since my wedding was put off, this is somewhat more unusual than that. To be honest, right now I'm sharing this on Reddit since I truly believe I need some objective advice on what to do. Whether it's friends or relatives, everyone will have some kind of biased view. I truly need guidance as, without a workable answer to all of this shortly, I fear losing my sanity. Since I discovered Karen had been cheating on me, I really feel like I'm returning to the time of my life when I was obsessing about her and Chris. I don't want to go back to that very dark period since it has taken a lot of time to get out of. Thus, whatever anyone has to say, kindly let me know so I may at least divert myself from the harshness of the opinion. So am I the expletive, for not visiting my family and supporting them following an accident involving my brother. Update 1. Hey buddies, I decided not to visit my family right now. Right now, it is quite too much for me. The things my parents were telling me alone let me realize just how severe my anxiousness had gotten over the past week. But right now I'm back on my anti-anxiety medicines and attempting to handle things. In the comments area of my initial article and even individually in my DMs, to let me know that they are there for me and that I am not alone, a lot of people have showered me with love and support which I'm extremely grateful for. Since I truly don't think I could handle all of this on my own, I have also confided in a few of my close friends about what is happening. They have also advised me to talk to them anytime I need to simply let it all out. They have also advised me that, for now, my decision to not go and meet them is the right one to make since it is the best one I could make right now for me. No matter what else people are going through in life, I have to prioritize myself. Chris and my family have always put themselves first, hence I should likewise do the same. To be honest, I hardly believe I should be there for them emotionally either. They can each handle this on their own. They have one other. After the wedding was called off and I discovered I'd been betrayed, I was the one with absolutely no one from my immediate family at my side. Though he was the one who had been in the wrong, my own parents had turned against me and had chosen my brother over me. Out of the family, he ought to have gone missing first. Still, that's only past. I'm attempting to go on from that. Should I return to them once more, I will not be able to accomplish it successfully. I have thus blocked all of them once more and will keep to my choice of not interacting with them. I truly regret what happened to my brother, but I hope he recovers quickly as, no matter what he has done, I cannot be the person wishing anything negative to happen to anyone. I thus hope things work out for them, but I am out of here. Right now, I'm just paying close attention to my own mental health. I'm thinking of returning to treatment. The way I handled this and the comments from my parents got under my skin. All those old emotions are resurfacing once more, hence I truly believe I should consult a professional since I don't think I'm handling all of this as well as I thought I was. I therefore simply now am looking out for myself. Update 2. I thus learned from a few relatives that my brother's condition is really severe and that it is not exhibiting any improvement. He still resides in the hospital. It has been almost 2 weeks. Although I feel horrible for the family as their situation is extremely terrible, there is not much I could do. Apart from myself, everyone who knows my family has dropped by the hospital to see my brother at least once in the previous 2 weeks and pay their sympathies for the horrible disaster that has happened. I would have done that, but then I also discovered via my relatives that my parents have been disparaging me to anyone who has been visiting them and projecting me as a terrible man. They seem to be telling everyone they begged me to come see them and be there for the family. But I had objected and said things like this was retribution for screwing me over 5 years back and my brother deserved this. For the record's sake, I clearly said nothing of the kind. Since I'm usually a friendly person to everyone, some of them got in touch to ask whether this was true or not since it seemed like nothing I would say. When they questioned me about it, I clearly informed them that my parents were fabricating it to make it seem like I was a horrible person, probably to get a reaction out of me or maybe simply because that's the type of people my parents are. Not that I said these things. Especially after already having screwed up my life once, I was simply quite let down that people were saying such things about me and fabricating stories only to present me as the evil guy. I'm just happy that my relatives asked me about it since, had they simply decided to trust my parents, then I doubt anyone in the family would have been speaking to me at this stage either. I had not spoken to my parents for the past 5 years, but the rest of my family, my aunts, uncles, and naturally my cousins, had been there for me. I honestly didn't want to lose that. And I suppose my parents chose to try and screw that up for me as well since they couldn't abide it. Simply said, I find it incomprehensible that people despise me so strongly. I have literally not done anything to them. Although my parents have always had a soft spot for my brother right from our youth, my brother and I have never been very close. This seems needless and overbearing. Update 3. Hi. So I posted an update 2 days ago. Today my mother decided to get in touch once more. She had nowhere else to go except pay me a visit to speak with me as I had blocked them everywhere. She was already there, waiting for me to get back home from work. Since I was simply so tired from work already, I really didn't feel like chatting to her. I almost decided I would be getting back into the car, but she noticed me and I had to go talk to her. Since it would be quite difficult to get rid of her, I chose to talk to her in the front yard instead of admitting her into my house. This proved to be quite bad for me since finally she started screaming at me, drawing the attention of the neighbors as well. The exchange began quite naturally. She just struck up a casual conversation with me and I had to respond gently. Then I couldn't help myself, so I started asking her why she had been fabricating lies about me to fit me as the evil man. I informed her that although my family had treated me like this, I had never wished anything negative to happen to them. I honestly simply wanted to go on with my life, but they were making even that incredibly difficult for me. I had been suppressing these emotions for a very long time. Hence when I saw her it simply spilled out and I couldn't control myself. Ultimately, I informed her that although they had never treated me the same way and I was rather let down by their actions, I found it quite difficult to consider them as family after all that had transpired. I stated that since I had just returned home from work and was truly not in the mood to fight or talk to anyone about anything too emotionally taxing, whatever she had come to discuss could be done later. She had been listening to me patiently up until that point, but she became rather agitated when I told her I wanted not to talk to her at that moment and said she was only here to apologize for the exact same things I had mentioned. She claimed that she and my father had not been thinking clearly. They had first been somewhat offended by my response since I had refused to stand up for my family and even paid visits to my brother while he was in the hospital. I wasn't not visiting since they then understood they hadn't exactly treated me well in the prior 5 years and that I was clearly still rather offended about that. She had come to try to settle things out between us since she thought the family should stick together right now for emotional stability. She changed her plan and decided she would yell at me instead when I informed her I wanted no conversation with her. She advised me to simply be happy that I still have a family since, following the way I had responded upon learning of my brother's injury, she had half of a mind to cut me off and ensure that the rest of my relatives likewise ceased communicating with me permanently. She clarified that she thought my reaction had not been sad enough when I found out about my brother's tragedy, as I did not know what she meant. Not even did I know what she had expected of me. She claimed that when I told her about my brother's accident, she expected me to at least show some feeling, but during the phone call I had just sounded quite apathetic. Clearly, regardless of our personal relationships, some news like that was absolutely going to impact me, and it has indeed. As I said before, I do not wish it onto anyone. This includes my family, even with our close ties. I was therefore quite offended learning about his accident. Perhaps that had not shown up on the phone call since she could not see my face, but her arguments were simply wholly unfounded and irrational. She even said that my brother's absence for Karen and my nephew had shown how little I valued the family, as I had not been there for them. She was only fabricating once more to support their behavior. Since these things are utterly strange and pointless, I truly believe that my parents have started to lose their minds. She started screaming at me, thus I lost even more interest in talking to her and chose to hide inside my house. I thus unlocked the entrance to my house after some time and entered while she was still screaming at me. She followed me inside, but I closed the door in her face and advised her to leave since I was really offended and wanted no further interaction with her. She battled with me, but I told her I would call the police. That's when she finally departed, but not before berating me out and declaring I would shortly suffer consequences. I'm not even curious about learning what that implies. I have no idea what that entails. I simply want to unwind and go on living. Update 4. Hi there, following the accident 26 days ago, my family at last received some positive news to deliver today to all. They obviously did not personally inform me about it. I learned about it from my cousins. The good news is that my brother is at last displaying some progress. That's a positive indication since he is reacting better and out of a coma is not. Though I'm not really regarded as part of the family anymore and have been thrown out long ago, the last month has been rather trying for everyone in the family, including myself, so I truly hope he can make it and that he only improves from here forward. My parents have truly proven to me that they are unhinged in the way they have been following my life throughout the past 26 days. They were simply venting their anger on me. Following my last conversation with my mother, which I discussed in my last update, I did not hear from her for a few days. Then though, my father called me up to scream at me instead. I cannot tell it was him as he used a different number from the one he typically uses. He started screaming at me practically right away when I answered the call, so I wouldn't even have a chance to hang up when I discovered it was him. He was rather cunning about it too. He aimed to surprise me so he could yell at me. My brain would be all muddled instead of phoning me at any regular time during the day. He decided to contact me at 5 in the morning when he knew I would be sleeping and would have to get woken up to answer his call. A few days after my conversation with my mother, my dad contacted me at 5 o'clock in the morning. Following almost 3 phone calls, I at last answered the 4th one. He began screaming at me right away about what an unappreciative child I was and how he wanted I never to have been born. I was a horrible human being for not even bothering to come see my brother in the hospital when he was suffering so much, and for not being there for the family, he claimed. Thus he said he was going to make sure the rest of the family never spoke to me again. I was still processing everything, thus he was the one who hung up after raving for about 5 minutes. By the time I finished with everything, he had hung the phone and banned me. It wasn't very hilarious at the time it happened, but now I find it really humorous since my parents are simply so determined to make me appear like a bad guy and yell at me for pointless actions. For these exact reasons, they are ready to go out of their way into such extremities. As usual, I had to be there for the family. I have already mentioned that I think they were venting their frustrations on me. They just wanted a scapegoat. However, it's okay as my father failed in convincing the rest of the family against me since they know I'm not guilty and they also know what happened 5 years ago. Still, I simply hope they get off my back and concentrate on my brother since his condition is getting better. Update 5. Hi, Returning here after almost 3 years seems somewhat strange. Since then, a lot has transpired, generally for the better. Right now I'm in Germany working. Having been here for the past year and a half, I have also started seeing someone. It's been lovely, truly. My girlfriend and I have been together for the past 8 months. If I'm being honest, I have had absolutely zero contact with my family for the past 3 years. That has also been delightful. To be different, I have stayed in touch with my good relatives. Right now, my brother is totally well. He survived the crash, and although it took him some time to recover, he is doing great right now. After my brother had begun to recover, Karen came over to me to apologize for all that had past transpired. But I just told her at this moment an apology was not necessary. After everyone realized I was heading to Germany for business, she came to see me with a bouquet to apologize on behalf of her and my brother. Though he was too embarrassed of the events 8 years ago, my brother could not come see me. Honestly, it made little difference now. I thus simply informed them I forgave them and showed no further care. And that was true, I was on better things, moving on with my life, so I did not really care. I have been here since then. My parents no longer interact with me and I'm quite glad about this, as I would never let that ever happen once more under any conditions. Now I'm at last content. Anyway, I must get back to my life now that you people are all caught up. Thank you so very much to the folks who showed me so much love and care when I was publishing here and also kept asking about me in the comments and everything long after I had stopped publishing.